Due to the following CBS School Break special, Magnum PI will not be seen today. It will be broadcast tomorrow in the regular time period.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
If you like comic books, then you definitely like comic art. Visit comicartfans.com to see original comic artworks and custom drawings that people have collected and posted online. Coming soon, Comic Art Fans is hosting an in-person event called the Original Art Expo that will focus on the hobby of collecting original comic art. The Original Art Expo will be held at the Doubletree by Hilton Hotel in Orlando, Florida on January 26th through the 28th, 2024. They will have over 30 exhibitors and 60 comic artists. Spend the weekend in an intimate setting with some of the best creators in the world. Purchase or commission a piece of original comic art. Visit the Comic Art and Illustration Galleries. Attend the Saturday night auction and pizza party and hang out with your fellow comic art enthusiasts. The Original Art Expo is sure to be the world's premier visual storytelling art event, so don't miss out. Go to oa-expo.com to get your tickets today and visit comicartfans.com to see what comic art collecting is all about.
Hi, I'm Alex Ross.
The two pieces are sort of a type. They're both kind of recreations of artwork that existed in the 90s. In fact, this piece here for the Avengers is in most ways a recreation or a tribute to George Perez's poster version from the mid-90s, where he did a shot that featured in it a figure of Captain America that was very similar to what I've done here, positioning of the Vision or positioning of Hawkeye, and I believe a few other elements are very similar to that piece, and it's consciously so. I was building off that inspiration, but I kind of refitted my design to fill out bigger shots of the figures so that I was making a wider composition and getting in a lot of the same characters, but still not quite as many as what George himself did, because George's thing was always to try and get in the maximum amount of content into pieces that he did.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Happy to welcome Tom King for another edition of the King's Speech. Good to see you, man.
What an absolute pleasure to be here, John. I love seeing you. It's like hanging out with an old friend. This is so great.
We are old friends. Good Lord. We've known each other. You know, this is my 19th year now.
No, I've almost been listening to you for 20 years. I started in 2006. So I'm oh my God. That's insane.
And we met in, like, I want to say 08.
Yeah,
when,
something like that, yeah.
Tom Fowler introduced me to you back in the day for Once a Crowded Sky.
I think that was a little later because 08 I was still in the agency. So
so
he
maybe
introduced you to me. He shouldn't have. Yeah.
Maybe it was maybe it was 2010.
2010.
So,
yeah, I think I like that. Yeah. So,
all right.
But I am a very regular listener still. I love your podcast. There is one thing I dislike about it, and I want to complain right off the front, is that you have targeted ads in your podcast that come on.
Yes.
And these are the targeted ads I get when I listen to Word Balloon. There's an old folks home in Maryland that has openings. Are you ready to go? That's what I get. That's what I get.
Wow.
It wants to commit me to an old folks home somewhere in Maryland, in the suburbs of Maryland. That's what
Trembling
the Word Balloon
Hills.
podcast is. That's what they've decided my demographic is as a listener. And then sometimes I get the, are you feeling sad and need a therapist online? Those are the two I get. Online therapist, and please commit yourself. You can't take care of yourself anymore, Mr. King.
Well, I'll warn everybody, because it's a political year, and I got to tell you, I need the money, kids. They asked, will you allow political ads? So there might be political ads that don't agree with my own political views.
Oh my goodness.
Depending on who's spending money on podcast advertising, that may come up. And also recreational drug, marijuana, if it's legal in your state, that might come up. So those are kind of semi-objectionable ads, and it's like, I'm sorry, everybody, I'm a whore. I need the money.
Is there some political consultant out there who's like, oh, I don't think Biden's going to get elected unless we get the word balloon audience? That's the key to bringing him over the top.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this word balloon ad.
Thin line between chaos and order in this country is John Johnson. All right, I'm in. I can't wait for my first word balloon politics.
I almost recorded a it would happen after the commercials, but I was thinking about maybe I should record a warning of, hey, listen, you might hear a spot. It's not my necessarily political view, but I want the money. So
can I get an ad on? Can I put an ad? Oh, awesome. I could just randomly advertise stuff on John's thing. Be like, have you seen pictures of Tom's dog? Try following him on Threads. He's one of the 6 people posting there.
Yeah, no, I'm on Blue Sky. I should do it more. I still post predominantly on X and Facebook. And my thing on X is, it's like, listen, I hate what Elon's doing to it. It's such a shame. It's my first social media platform that made it, other than MySpace back in the day. And I kind of feel like, well, I moved in this neighborhood first, not Elon. So until they really start making us like pay to be on Twitter X, I'm going to stay there. But I did already move to Blue Sky's where I moved. I don't know where everybody else in the chat is these days, but I'm
off Twitter pretty much full time. Yeah, I think everyone has. Clay Mann said to me, and I think it was wise. He said people follow you for a reason, and that's why he stays on there, which seems perfectly logical to me. Like people have, you got lots of followers and they follow you for a reason. I still go on, and sometimes I'll retweet something Bilka says if she's trying to promote something or that kind of thing. But yeah, some of the stuff crossed some lines for me. But everyone has their own lines. I'll tell you what my line was. He was going off that Pizzagate thing, and that stupid pizza restaurant that's involved in that is very close to where one of my kids goes to school, and it just made me angry when he was talking about it, because people don't know the history of that. Like a guy went in that store with a gun, and then there was a shooting that was near there not too long after. And one of those things when it's like, shooting my kids, and I was just like, I'm going to take a little break from the site for a while. So that's what triggered me from leaving. But everybody has their lines, and I don't blame anyone who wants to stay on there. If everyone's right, like Clay said, people follow you for a reason, and I do. I go there and I say, buy my book every once in a while. But if you want to find me, I'm on Instagram. That's kind of where I've retreated to.
There you go. And
so that's where I
should be on, and I'm on Instagram too. I should post there more. But I don't have images to really throw up there beyond the obvious. I'm very disorganized. I don't know. I don't know. I try to comment only on positive stuff. What did I put the other?
I like to keep positive too.
I said that I go to Facebook and I don't mind like watching the videos there, reels or the longer videos. But and I don't mind. Now the AI generated, I don't think they're generated. Obviously, somebody is making them, but they'll do videos and they'll do things on pop culture history. And my only caveat is, can you get it right? Because a lot of times
that's your only caveat.
Well, yeah,
you don't care about anything else as long as the facts are there.
Yeah, just I'm Joe Friday, just the facts, man. Because I was watching one the other day, and they're like, when Marilyn Monroe died when she was only 32, and it's like, no, she was 36. And I know that's not a big difference, but 36 is different than 32, as you and I know, having experienced both birthdays. It's like, it's not that hard to get it right. 36. What's that?
I had 3 kids when I was 36, only 2 when I was 32.
There you go. That's what I'm saying, man. So, yeah, I don't know. A lot of people are saying, hey, I'm on Threads or wherever they are. Leandro says... he's watching, but it's already after midnight down in his time zone. He's sleepy, so yeah, watch it tomorrow, Leandro. That's fine. That and folks, if we discuss something early and although you wouldn't see this note right now, but and it's like, hey, did you talk about Wonder Woman yet? And we've already talked about Wonder Woman. A lot of times I'll put it in the chat, rewind. It's there. I'm not necessarily going to readdress whatever subject, but we should start with, you've got a couple creator-owned books that are getting started. And
that's for saying we should start with how are you doing? How are you doing in the snow? Are you freezing?
Yeah, Tom. I mean, honestly, it was your classic. I mean, it's been a while since we've had this kind of Chicago weather where massive snow dump last Tuesday, and then then by Thursday it's freezing, and it was literally sub-zero. Like, hey, today's high is -1, and it's -20 overnight, and it's like, God damn it, man! Thank God I park on the street. But the car started every day despite the Alaska-like weather. And today it was a high of 18. And tomorrow it's going to be around.
Congratulations on the balmy weather.
Yeah, well, next week we're going to hit 30s and 40s. So that's fine. And that's kind of what we now get in our winter is we'll get a massive snow dump for one day. And then ultimately within a couple days, it'll be warm enough that it melts away.
Two old men talking about the weather. This is good podcasts. That's what everyone's tuning in for. Yeah, it is also cold in DC, and my car has died 3 times. In fact, I was almost late to this podcast because I was with my car getting my battery replaced because the AAA guy was 3 hours late. Very nice guy. But
when that happens, jeez.
But yes, my wife is from Chicago, and every day she looks at the weather and been like, "Oh my God." I'm from LA. I grew up where sane people live. I don't understand why any of us subject ourselves.
Yeah, but you're on that, continental shelf where Superman's got to go underground and and fix the continental line, or all of a sudden
teach you in Chicago. So my wife says the same thing. I'm like, let's move to LA. She's like, it's gonna fall into the sea. I was like, that's not how it works. That's not how the land thing works. That's like some Marty Krofft bullshit he did. That's not real. See, I did
and your wife being from Chicago suburbs,
yeah,
I trust her thinking that more than I do than yours, Tom King. I got to be honest with you, man. So I look forward to that time eventually where I will meet your wife. I'm sure she's a lovely one.
Oh, she's lovely. You got to come to a con. She's wonderful.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Meet the wife, meet the kids.
Before we get into the new stuff, Wayne has an interesting question. Any chance of doing an Inferior 5 or Amazing Man story? Those are two interesting level things.
I would love to do an Inferior 5. So I think Win Mortimer was the first artist on Inferior 5. Look at that.
I love Win Mortimer.
Why doesn't love him more?
Do you know? All right, and I'll say this because I'm hoping to do a word balloon on this. The Marvel artist from the 50s, Joe Maneely, Fantagraphics is going to collect a bunch of his stories in a collection. And I asked the PR people behind it. I'm like, hey, I'd love to talk about the book. Can you give me an interview subject? And this isn't Fantagraphics. This is the PR firm. And they're like, no, we don't have it. Yeah, they don't have anybody repping the book. And I'm like, all right. So I Wade an email, and I said literally like just within the last half hour. I said Wade an email, and also Scott Dunbier, figuring one of them know if they couldn't do it themselves, they would know somebody that could talk about Joe Maneely.
That's cool. I don't know anything about Joe Maneely.
John,
are you hearing my voice is kind of echoing? I got a little echo.
Not on my end. Anybody on the chat? Are we echoing at all? Because I'm not hearing.
It's just in my ears.
Do you have earbuds in, or?
I do have earbuds in. I have my old.
That's even weirder.
Yeah, I don't know. If it's not bothering anybody, it's fine with me. I just don't want people to get a bad sort of connection to the podcast.
No, I get it. All right, let's go. Let's talk about the books for a minute because we're going to be.
We can't just do weather talk the whole time. Weather talk, Tom and John.
And people are saying no echoes, so that's good.
Great. Good.
Now, a lot of people are asking questions about DC books, but I do want to talk first about the 2 creator-owned books that you've got going. We've got
a big book coming out that's on FOC.
Is that Helen of Wyndhorn first?
That's Helen of Wyndhorn, yes. So what FOC means, that's comic book language for that's the last time your comic book store has a chance to order it. And that's happening at the end of the month, January 29th. What that actually means in terms of real talk is that I'm going to come on here and beg you to ask your comic book store to order this. How does that work? Ask your comic. That just means if you're at the store, you're buying a comic, you're getting a Wonder Woman, be like, hey, I heard Tom King's got a new comic out. That sounds cool. I want a copy. That's all I need. Or if you can call them if you want, you can email them, you can text them, you can Twitter them. You can officially pre-order them as they're doing it. That's the nicest thing you can do. But if you just like are at your store and be like, man, that book looks cool, I'm interested in it. That's my big ask for me trying to sell it to you.
And it's the return of Ewan Bickwiselvi. How do you say her name? Am I saying it right?
Bilquis.
Bilquis Evely?
Don't ask me the last name. I got the first one.
Oh, that's cool. Bilquis, okay.
I've never met her in person. We've emailed a long time. She lives in Brazil. I was supposed to go out to Brazil. It got canceled for some bureaucratic reasons. But I've been told by Brazilians it's Bilquis. Okay,
excellent. She's great. Of course, your Supergirl miniseries collaborator. That we all adored.
If people don't know, Bilquis and I did the Supergirl run together. It's being now turned into a movie. They just announced that they're doing some casting for it. And it's one of the best things I ever wrote. It's one of the best selling things I ever wrote. So you guys probably already know about it, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And it's got absolutely brilliant art. And so I'm going to talk about this book for the next 50 minutes. The one thing I want you to take away is that if you liked Supergirl and you want more of that, that's what this book is. That's literally why I wrote it. That's how I wrote it. That was my eye on the whole time. I was like, I love what we did in Supergirl. I loved that tone, that mixture of high adventure with sort of deep emotional connection. And I wanted to do that again. And I wanted to do something right in Bilquis's wheelhouse where she could show off and show how she's evolving as an artist and getting even better than Supergirl, which I didn't think was possible. And so that's what this book is. If you liked Supergirl and you want more of it, we're doing a 6-issue Dark Horse series, and every issue is going to blow you away. And that's all it is. It's more Supergirl. It's more of that.
And I liked your elevator pitch to me about it, and I'll let you'll do it again. But what you said in your email to me.
Yes. The elevator pitch is Conan meets Wuthering Heights, which is a bizarre sentence for any human being to say. It was definitely like a peanut butter and chocolate situation of two things I was obsessed with at the time. I was trying to sort of come up with an idea. Bilquis had sent me sort of a mood board of sort of things she wanted to draw. And they were like, they were fantastical things. There were things she really wanted to go sort of back into period 30s and 40s. And at the time I was reading Wuthering Heights. I have no idea why. I had read it in high school and I came across it again. And in high school, I literally read it in one night. I remember it was one of those like I had a test the next day and it was my senior year. And I'm just like, I'm doing this. And so and I was like, what if I read this now? What would my opinion be? Because I remember thinking at the time, I was like, I have no idea what this book is. There's a lot of mores. So I read it again and I thought it was like super cool. It has this weird sort of narration that's inside a narration. It's one of those books that's got kind of turducken where you kind of go deeper into the narrators. And I also, I started to research like gothic novels, and I found this whole genre of super. I love sort of the old Pulp Fiction stuff, as you do, John. And yes. Like there were the tradition of pulp gothic novels I thought was very bizarre. Where like literally, if you Google gothic pulp novels, there's thousands of these things, and they all have basically the same cover, which is a woman in a dress running away from a building, and like literally thousands of that image, just in different versions of that image, drawn by like the best artists of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But it's just a woman running away, and that's why our cover is a take on that, where she's not running away, she's sitting down. And so I was very getting obsessed with that. And then at that same time, I think I just saw an interview with Roy Thomas talking about Conan, and I was like, I want to read some Conan comics. I'd never gotten into it, and I started reading like Roy's run. And it was like, oh, it blew my mind. It was so good. And I just loved it. I loved the narration. I loved he didn't use sound effects. The Barry Windsor Smith art and the John Buscema art. Just out of this mind stuff. And then I started reading the books. And so I'm reading Conan. I was like, man, I love this sort of Conan. I know I'm way late to this, and I should have gone to that my earlier nerd, but I was late. I apologize. And I was like, who's this? And so I was like, wow, I love Conan and I love Wuthering Heights. And I need an idea. And so I put them together and I started to think about this idea. And where it's kind of solidified for me is sort of, how Howard killed himself. For people who don't know, the creator of Conan, there's a movie about it.
The Whole Wide World.
I think Vincent D'Onofrio plays him.
Yeah. And Renee Zellweger is the woman in the movie, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that's like the actual truth. I think it's an artistic interpretation.
I agree. Yes.
so he was, a pulp novelist. He didn't get riches and fame, but he did very well. And then his mother died, and he was very close to his mother. And on his mother's deathbed, he just walked to his car, took a gun from his glove compartment, and shot himself in the head. He was 30 years old.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who had basically changed science fiction fantasy forever. I mean, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, like 30% of Game of Thrones is Conan. Like, that's one of the brilliance of George R. R. Martin, is that he's like, I'm going to take the Dothraki, which is that's just the Conan world. That's all the Dothraki are. And then mix that with some, Dragonlance, and it becomes a different thing. He was mixing cool shit, not Wuthering Heights and Conan, but so I got this idea, of course, I was like, I want to explore the idea that the guy who created this perfect character in Conan the Barbarian, this like utter, manly, awesome man, shot himself, and what that means. And so I had this idea about what if he had a daughter, and after he shot himself, she was exploring sort of why he did that. And then I had the idea of where the Wuthering Heights was. Like, I was like, well, what if he had a grandfather who then took her into his house? Because that's what these things are always about. It's about a woman who goes to sort of a mysterious house. And so it became the story of a girl whose father kills himself, and her grandfather picks her and takes her to his house. And what she discovers is that her grandfather is sort of Conan the Barbarian, and that the stories are based on him. And she discovers a fantasy world. And that's sort of what the book is about. It's about a grandfather and a granddaughter bonding over the son that separates them, the generation that separates them. The grandfather understanding why his son killed himself, and the daughter understanding why her father killed herself. And it's this sort of 6-issue series. And Bilkis has been working on it for, I think, 2 years now. And the art, every line is going to blow you away. It's like looking at a 3-dimensional picture. I don't know how to. You fall into the pages. You cannot believe.
Oh yeah.
And she opens up each book with a pulp splash in sort of that old pulp in a different kind of style. Matt Lopez is doing the art, the coloring on this. Who did the coloring on Supergirl? Clayton Cowell is doing the lettering. He did the lettering on Supergirl. So it's the entire team from Supergirl on this book. And I can't believe how it came out. It's absolutely beautiful and lovely, and it's one of the good things I've ever written. So.
DJ Riley wants to know how quickly this project came together after Supergirl.
I think I just described it to you how quickly it came together. I immediately was emailing, as I do whenever I, find a genius. I shouldn't say stumble upon a genius. Like, you want to be like, what can we do next? What do you want to do next? And she said creator owned. And so I was immediately thinking of this idea for her. So I wrote this very soon after. Now she did some work with Neil Gaiman. She did some work on her own. So it has been a while, but I wrote this right after Supergirl. This is the writer who wrote Supergirl wrote this.
That's
so
cool.
If you're like, Tom, you used to know how to write. Now you don't. Well, this is the old Tom who knew how to write.
And again, final order cutoff is at the end of this month.
Yes.
For a March release.
I know it's got that weird Wyndhorn in it. Just tell your story. I heard Tom's got a new book. It's called Helen, and that's what I want. Yes, that's all. Just tell your story. You want Helen. You won't regret it. Also, if you're the kind of person, like I'm the kind of person who wants to get the comic book before they become the Hollywood property, not least because you can sell it on eBay and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Lord knows I've done that. This is that kind of book, because we've got a ton of Hollywood stuff interested in this, obviously, with the Supergirl movie and everything. So this is a place to get on the ground floor of something.
Doesn't surprise me with Bridgerton and Downton Abbey. That's another vibe that I got reading the first issue is Downton Abbey. I think that's great. And again, I love genre splicing when we get two very different things, and people like yourself or Remender or some of the other good creators are like, no, this is a way to tell a story and satisfy both genres and do it in a very unique way. And I think that's what you're going to get from Helen of Wyndhorn. So from Dark Horse, everybody, just so you know. And then here, where is it? Oh, speaking of Dark Horse, isn't that where Love Everlasting is?
Love Everlasting is at Image. I'm at every company now. Everyone except IDW. They don't love me. I know IDW is the best. But the IDW is currently being run by my two former Batman editors, so that's a pretty good company. That's a pretty.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I talked
Maybe
to
mention Mark Doyle or our running IDW.
I spoke to Doyle at the American Library Association's conference last
Wonderful
summer.
man.
Great guy, and expect some more IDW conversations here at Word Balloon in the near future, because they're, as you know, I love what they're doing with Star Trek. I think they're doing Star Trek right.
Oh,
All
100%. Love it.
all of
Love
it.
Cantwell stuff.
Cantwell's
Love
doing a
Lanning
great job. Lansing and Kelly are killing it on their book. Guggenheim did a great Star Trek motion picture, the first original cast movie era.
I haven't read that. I heard your interview with Guggenheim, so I should have picked it up. So I heard the pitch and didn't pick it up. Just like I'm asking people, I'm defying my own recommendation.
And it's a good Uhura story, Mark's story. And it's like, we need more Uhura stories. That's good. I like that. So, well, Michael, thinking that Love Everlasting was Dark Horse, but it's Image, Michael wanted to know how the Love Everlasting distribution experience was for you. Do you prefer Substack or physical comics, or the combination?
I prefer physical comics. I'm not going to go in the middle here. I like to read my comics physically. Here's my Love Everlasting physical copy right there.
Stand by. I'll zoom back in. Do it.
Oh, there it is. Right there. That's the first trade.
Nice.
Available comic stores. It's got a nice bloody wedding dress on.
And much like Bilkis, Ilza Chartier just killing it on Love Everlasting. Such a beautiful.
She's the best. I was just looking at one of her covers today. It's such a job. I've worked with the best artists in comics. I'm the luckiest guy in comics. That's an easy sentence to say. Substack. I'm not. My problem is that I have too many deadlines. That's the honest. I mean, I don't know if you noticed. I'm sure John and I will talk about 30 books that I've got coming out, and I'm also doing a bunch of this Hollywood stuff. So just finding time to blog every week. I don't know how Jason Aaron, he does the Beard missives, and Scott's doing his class, and Bendis is doing his thing. I mean, I'm just jealous of all that. All I have time are for my 3 kids to sort of try to get them through their lives and just to hit my comic book deadlines. I mean, just like my day today, I had 2 dead last lettering drafts. I had to do cover copy for Elsa. I had to do promotion for Helen, and I had to write 4 pages of the Penguin. And so, like, I don't know when I was going to give time to do a Substack. I like writing and having it just published in a comic book store. I love comic book stores, like going to comic book stores, like buying stuff in comic book stores. That's my preference. I'm an old fossil dinosaur, and it's too late for me not to be. Not that digital comics are fine, but I can be wrong. And I read a lot of digital comics. I read most new comics digitally. But when I really want to, I do that mostly for work. When I want to have that comic book experience, and to me, the ultimate comic book experience is that thing where you're like lying on the couch, you got a blanket over you, it's warm, you pick something up and you fall into it. Like there's no outside, there's no world outside of you. Like that's what comics do. I think even better because the pictures and the words combined, there's just enough imagination that you have to add that you're participating. But since it's not all words, you don't sort of fall asleep immediately. So like you merge with the work in some sort of way, and the fucking pressure of the day melts away, and you just become these characters. And that doesn't work for me digitally. When I'm on a digital thing, I don't absorb it the same way. I feel pressure to go over and check social media. I'm getting texts from my stupid kids on the screen. It's a different sort of experience. I like the physical experience of comics.
I can appreciate that. Absolutely. Again, I'm seeing so many questions about DC books in particular, and I swear to you,
ask me anything.
We'll get to no, but really, I want to hit these 2 creator-owned books first. So we have again, everybody, Helen of Wyndhorn.
Helen of Wyndhorn, and I give you a huge speech on Helen of Wyndhorn, but you don't have to remember any of that shit. Just remember, I like Supergirl. I'll like this. That's it. That's all you have to do. Remember.
That's fair. And then moving to Boom. A really interesting animal book, and I'll be honest, Tom, not a fan of animal books. We 3, although, and again, I mean, I really give it up to Tony Fleece and company. And right
love
now,
that book. Oh my
I forget the name of that book, but that was amazing. Stray Dogs, of course. And much like Stray Dogs, this is a very intriguing idea. Animal Pound from Boom. It's you and Peter, the great Peter Gross. It's another great looking book, but this I'll let you reveal as much as you want to from this first issue. But honestly, man, it's these kind of books where it's like, I'm not normally a big fan. However, this sucked me in, and this was a very, very good, strong first issue, and it will that's it's very important, and Wyndhorn is the same way with Helen in terms of you need to sell that concept in that first book so that at the end of the book it's like, okay, everybody, you understand what the journey's going to be. Are you in or not? And I think Animal Pound achieves that. But give us the 10-cent pitch on Animal Pound.
So Animal Pound's already come out. It came out last month, and it's sold out. So thank you for that. You guys rock. The next edition's coming out. So if you see it on the shelf, pick up this one. If you see it, then the second print's coming. Animal Pound is an updating, a thematic sequel of a book many of you probably read in high school or even junior high, which is Animal Farm. And Animal Farm is the tale. It was written in 1944 by Orwell, and it's the tale of sort of the rise of fascism from the threat of communism. Orwell was a fellow traveler, or a guy who flirted very much with sort of communism, and then became disillusioned during the Spanish War for complicated reasons, which are to go into. And I read that book. I mean, everybody's been blown away with that book. My own people in the CIA were the ones who made that book a bestseller in the 1950s because they used it as propaganda to get Americans to hate communism. But at this point, I don't think the threat of fascism comes from communism. The communists don't really worry me these days. I feel like the threat of fascism comes from elsewhere. And I also don't think the threat is revolution anymore. I think the problem is, the flaws in our own system and people sort of taking advantage of the flaws in our own system. So to me, I felt like we could update that. We could use the metaphor of animals and talk about the rise of modern day fascism. And instead of using what Orwell used, which was like pigs and cows and horses, and took an Animal Farm, I'm going to use a metaphor of an animal pound with dogs and cats and rabbits. And so in the first book,
I do that all the time. All the time.
It's harder now because with the Hollywood stuff.
Sure.
In the first issue, one might say, first chapter, just like as in the first chapter of Animal Farm, the animals overthrow the farm and sort of declare their independence. Here we have the animals of the pound reenacting the American Revolution and overthrowing the humans and sort of taking over the pound. And as with Animal Farm, when things don't go well at the farm, things will not go well at the pound either. The number one question I get about this book is it a dead dog book? I don't want to read dead dog books. I am a dog owner. If you don't know, my dog's name is Roxy. She's the best thing ever. I also grew up with cats. I was a cat owner as a kid. I had two cats. They like the cat sleep in your bed every night. They were just like cuddle with me. She followed me around the house. Tiger and Mookie were the names of the cats. They're wonderful. I do not want to read dead dog books either. That said, it's about a pound. It's about a kill pound. And in the beginning, there is a dog. So if that completely turns you off, I can't say there are no dogs tonight. But this is not about animals getting hurt. It's not about animals getting injured. I know I still can't read that book. I know it's fantastic and people love it. I can't read it. It'll break my heart. So I understand that.
That's my problem. Absolutely.
That's not what this book is about. It's not about torturing animals or making you sad because they're animals. It's about fascism. It's about sort of the little mistakes we can make along the way to the one big mistake.
It reminds me of the first new Planet of the Apes movie with James Franco, and the kid that plays Malfoy is in charge of the apes that are there and kind of being cruel to those apes and stuff. And yeah, it's got that vibe. And also, for people who haven't read it yet, the animals are sentient and they speak to each other, which is great.
Just like an Animal Farm, the animals are sentient, but they're still animals. Cats are still lazy. Dogs are still grumpy and fickle and want to pee everything. Like it's an absolute. I cannot tell you what delight it is to write this book and to write these bizarre sentences where the first is like time when the dog says time spent arguing with cats is better spent smelling a friend's droppings. Like you can write these wonderful sentences of what a dog would sound like. Yes, and the dog, all the dogs have great. The the dog who's most inspirational is Lucky, and Titan
Yes.
is the one, and Madame Fifi is, you'll have to find out what that name means, but and then Piggy is one of the dogs. There's lots of metaphors. There's lots of things you can, hopefully when this is all collected together, you can read it as one story. You can also read it with your kids at school and teach it. Like the whole thing. I wanted to give a modern interpretation, because I just think reading Animal Farm now, it's wonderful. It's brilliant. It's by a man who's an incredible writer. But the warnings it's giving us are not the warnings we currently need.
Okay, and again, I really enjoyed the first issue. How many? 6 issues? 5 issues?
5 issues. It'll be 5. Yeah. In and
Cool.
out.
Boom.
It was 4, and I had to extend. I rarely do this, but I was like, I need one more issue because I'm covering the entire history of America, and it's hard. But yeah, and Peter Gross is on the art. I should say Peter Gross is a legend. I know him best from Books of Magic. Maybe you know him from Lucifer. I used to photocopy his pages when I was an intern at DC Comics back when I was in college. That's how old I am, and that's how much older Peter is than me. But this is Peter wrote me the nicest note after the pitch, and just based on that note, I was like, I have to work with this guy, and he's just absolutely brilliant. And he continues to. I thought it would be, in my head, it was much more cartoony, and he drew it much harder than he should have, and it's much more realistic. And I just think he absolutely captures the tone of the book. And the art is stunning. And he has to do so much with so little, because it all takes place in a pound. There's only like 5 rooms they can possibly be in, but there's also 50 rabbits and 40 cats and 10 dogs. So, it's going to be hard.
Dylan wants to know, Animal Pound was amazing. Hard to read as a new dog owner. Will there be any exotic pets like sugar gliders, peacocks, etc.?
No, because of the metaphor, I had a big thought on like the different kinds of animals I could bring in, but just to keep the metaphor clean and just to keep it easy, we're just sticking with dogs, cats, and rabbits. And each of them has a sort of role to play in how this goes down and how it happens. A lot, you see me, I'm sort of talking around the big twists and stuff, but it'll be clear in issue 2 and 3, sort of how the tragedy starts to leak in.
Excellent, man.
It's tough to pitch a tragedy, John. It's tough to be like, read my book. It's going to end with sadness.
No,
it really is hard.
Hey,
I want to be like, in the end, all the animals are happy and the whole thing works out. But sometimes I just don't feel that's the way things are going to go. Sometimes.
No, I respect that. It's okay, but no, I hear you. I mean, and again, that's why, as we said earlier, it's hard for me to read or watch. Not only read animal stories, but watch animal stories. I'm sure I've told this story before on Word Balloon, but it still cracks me up. My father very good-naturedly took me and my sister in the 70s to watch the first Benji movie. And Benji is fine at the end of the movie, but in the middle of the movie, I forget even what happens. But my sister, I was 5, my sister is 10, and we are bawling our eyes out. And all I can think of now is my father, like, beside himself because he's brought his children to this tragedy. And really, everybody's fine now. But it wasn't that long after our mother had passed away. So we're crying. And my dad's like, no, it's going to be okay. I swear. And he's half laughing. And he's just like, it's going to be fine. I promise you. Don't worry. But it's like, it's like Bill Murray in Stripes. Who cried when Old Yeller died? Nobody cried when Old Yeller died, I'm sure. And it's like, yeah, man, come on. We don't want to see animals hurt. We appreciate that. So, in fact, did somebody say, did you do
one puppy launched all of John Wick? It's a thing.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. No, it's true. Before we get into the DC stuff, where the hell is it? Someone wanted to know. Oh, here it is. Michael wanted to know, can you tell us about meeting the United States Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, on the panel about post-traumatic stress disorder? What were your takeaways from that panel? That's cool.
That's a deep cut.
When was this?
This is
Obama administration.
It's in the Obama administration, yeah.
Yeah.
So what, 2004, 15, 14, something like that? Yeah, I for Heroes in Crisis, I did a PTSD panel here in DC. That was DC Comics did it in the museum, which they've since torn down. It was in a museum that no longer exists.
Oh my God, I love that place. Oh, yeah, that's heartbreaking.
It is gone. And I was on a panel, and sitting next to me was the Surgeon General of the United States, which was weird. Oh, he wasn't Surgeon General back then. Maybe he became Surgeon. Or maybe he was Surgeon General. Anyway, but he was incredibly nice, and he was very sort of interested. And I was talking about my struggles, and I mean I've talked about this before. I was closer to it back then. I had this sort of breakdown in 2016, this sort of nervous breakdown thing that led to what Mr. Miracle became. And I was talking about that and my war experience and how you recover and all this, and the panel went great, and he was really into it. And afterwards, he came by and we talked for a long time, and my wife came over, and he's introduced my wife, and I felt it was a very DC sort of moment. But then he became in charge of Biden's COVID response. He's still going strong. So he was incredibly kind and cool, and and I don't know. I don't have a not nice word to say about the guy.
I was glad he participated in and I forget Hari's last name, the stand-up comic that made the documentary about Apu, and it's called The Trouble with Apu, and he was one of the Indian people that he went to and said, what was your experience knowing this character was on The Simpsons, and Vivek is close enough to our age. I think he's in between our ages or around your age. I forget, but certainly close enough that he would have, seen Apu back as a kid and stuff. And he had great insight. It was very, very interesting. So no, I didn't know you had a panel with him. That's awesome.
Super. Do you know, this is off the top, do you know my mother did some of the initial work on The Simpsons in the very, very beginning?
As an animator, what did she do?
As a lawyer. Yes, my mother was a lawyer for 20th Century Fox. And I very much remember she came in. She's like, "Do you know that cartoon on Tracy Ullman?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's the only good part about Tracy." Because when you're a kid, the only cartoons are the only good parts of things. I was an idiot. And she's like, "They're gonna turn that into a show, and I have to do I have to sign all." She had to do all the initial contracts.
Wow.
And all the dot your I's and get the talent signed and all that stuff that that made so many people so much money. But I very much remember my mother pitching that to me and being like, "Is this going to be? Would you watch this?" But yeah, that was my.
That's crazy.
And so we had. I remember before anyone else, we had shirts, and we went on the lot and saw a little premiere and stuff. Yeah,
oh wow, man! I was just watching an old James Brooks interview with Kevin Pollak. And James Brooks, one of the creatives behind.
I know who James Brooks is.
Well, I'm saying this for the audience. I know you.
Terms of Endearment and Taxi's a weird guy.
God, and what bummed me out? I think one of the more normal Burt Reynolds sitcom or comedy movies, Starting Over, where he's not trying to be macho cool guy. He's a substitute teacher that's teaching an adult annex course about writing, and his ex-wife is Candice Bergen, and his new girlfriend is Jill Clayburgh. It's 1978. He doesn't wear his hairpiece or a wig.
The most 1978 sentence you ever said.
And it really plays like a Jim Brooks, Mary Tyler Moore produced sitcom. And it's one of my favorite movies. And apparently, I mean, he was careful with his words, but apparently Burt was very much Burt. Big dog on the set and kind of annoying to work with, which is a shame because it's one of my favorite movies. Pardon me.
Have you seen the Burt Reynolds, Mark Summers Face Off? I think it was on Carson. It might have been on Leno.
I think it was on years Carson. Ago, and I know what you're talking about. And I'm trying to, I don't remember specifics. But yeah, that's an interesting battle of those two guys.
It is worth seeing on YouTube if you just want to see some 10 minutes of the most awkward television as Burt Reynolds, for no particular reason, decides to crush Mark Summers on live national TV.
Every now and then he would Burt would do really amazing interviews, and he really had tremendous respect for old Hollywood. In fact, he made 2 CBS specials where he sits in a round table with old Hollywood people. One is male actors, and one is all leading ladies, female actors. And they're fantastic, and he knows his stuff, and he gets out of the way, and he lets everybody tell their stories. And these groups are really eclectic, especially on the male side, because it's Ricardo Montalban, Jimmy Stewart, Mickey Rooney, and I forget whom else. And yeah, but it's God, and Montalban, everyone forgets because of Mr. Rourke and Fantasy Island and Khan. And it's like, no, you go back in the filmography, Montalban worked with everybody and was in a bunch of musicals. But also, I just watched last week on Turner. He's in the Train Robbers, an early 70s John Wayne and Margaret movie, and he's one of the other people in the movie. And I have such respect for Montalban. I mean, yeah, Mr. Rourke is a lot of fun, and it's high cheese. But it's like, no, man, you go. As I've told you before, one of my favorite noir movies is a movie he made in the early 50s called Mystery Street.
Love Mystery Street. It's like the first Law and Order episode. It's amazing.
And one of the first forensic science movies as well.
Yeah, it's like a Bones episode.
Yeah, Bones. Absolutely. And he is so fantastically low-key and not, you, my friend, can do XYZ as he became with Mr. Rourke. And it's like, I love the musicality of his delivery in Fantasy Island. Ah, yes, that is Mr. Gibbons. He's always wanted to be an international jewel thief. And it's like, of course he did. And then, of course, we're talking about Bob Denver. And it's like, yeah, great. Or, or there's I think it's Ken Berry on Fantasy Island. And I can't believe this got past the censors, but he always wanted to participate in a menage a trois. And I'm like, wow, how is this on Saturday Night TV? My goodness. So, whew. And of course,
Eddie Muller has a good Montalban story that I'll steal from him.
Eddie Muller?
Yeah, Eddie Muller does
Noir Alley.
Noir Alley.
Our good friend Eddie Muller. Go on. Yes.
Good friend. Yeah. It's a wonderful dude.
We've met him times, exactly.
He interviewed Ricardo and he's like, because I think you probably remember this, but like Ricardo would do Mercedes commercials, like he would do
Cordova.
Yeah, there was that all the time, and he's like, and Eddie was like, you're a classically trained actor who's very famous, but do you ever you feel, I don't know how you phrased it, probably, but like, do you feel shame or belittle? Like, does this make you feel like to be in these commercials all the time? And he's like, are you kidding? I'm a poor little guy from Mexico, and they think me being in a commercial is going to sell Americans cars? That's the goddamn dream, motherfucker. I'm sure he didn't say motherfucker, but I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I love that the Latin community really honors his whole career, and they get it. And it's like, no, because unfortunately, there were a lot of roles, and he never suffered these. He was always, certainly as he progressed, was, if not like just a cool, exotic actor. As he got older, he always played like respectable characters, or even in Naked Gun, where he's the bad guy and stuff. And he's
hilarious in Naked Gun. I watched it with my kids recently. Oh my god, they were cracking up.
Absolutely,
that's how my kids knew him. That's how I first knew him. I think I knew him as that before I saw Khan. Because when I was a kid, I did not like Star Trek 2 because I saw it as a little kid, and the little earworms freaked the fuck out of me.
That was gross.
I didn't see it until like I was a teenager again, and I realized how good it was. That was like I thought that one's the scary one. So I first knew him through Naked Gun. But he's also a Columbo villain, so let's also give him a shout out, because that's a resume. If you're in a noir and you're in a Naked Gun and you're in a Star Trek, then you're my favorite actor.
If you're a Montalban fan, you gotta watch his oral history of television interview, and he talks about this episode of Bonanza where he played a Native American who decides to Anglo himself to get better work and better business in the white community. And he is ostracized by his Indian community, his Native American community, and he's ostracized by the white community. And apparently, at this point, I don't know how many seasons into Bonanza it was, the regular cast is just so over any sort of effort in serious acting. So they're just kind of dicking around during rehearsal and even when they're shooting and stuff. And Montalban really made a stink. And he said, hey, I'm an actor. I know I'm a guest this week, but I need something more than what you people are giving me. And treat me with respect, because this is a very difficult role and I want to do it right. If you guys don't care, that's your business. And he said, it was a great story. And he said everybody came up to him one by one privately and are like, I'm so glad you said something. It's not me, it's the rest of them, and we all get sucked into it. And it was just so great. And it's like, don't fuck with Mr. Zero. Don't fuck with Ricardo Montalban, man. So no, I adore him. He was the man. Oh, I didn't know this. Robert says, I assume that Montalban was also in Freakazoid, which is fantastic. That fantastic 90s cartoon. Who knew?
More keeps giving.
Hilarious.
I know you turned in for the DC Comics, but this is now the Montalban.
This is what we do. It's fun. I don't mind at all. All right, as we slowly get into DC, Michael wanted to know our good friend Greg Smallwood is writing Batman the Barbarian and Elseworlds.
I hate him. I hate Greg Smallwood.
Did you talk to him at all about writing or get an indication that was his next step?
I despise artists who write. I don't respect. Do I come into your office and draw on the walls? No. Of course, Greg and I talked very briefly. He said he was writing. He had all of my blessing. Many of the artists I've worked with are now writing for themselves, and this is a horrible thing that's happened because it's one thing for me to be like, they're like, oh, I'm gonna go work with Mark Waid now. I can be like, Mark Waid, you didn't know he's a Nazi? Like that's what he goes on. Like I can say something like I can. Mark Waid. He's not a. We
love Mark. He's one of our favorite people. Yes, just to clarify.
Mark's a buddy of mine. I'm just kidding. But when they're like, I'm gonna go write for myself, it's hard for me to throw the writer under the bus. It's hard to compete with. So yes. Greg is off doing his own thing. Doc Shaner, who I worked with. I don't know.
We'll leave it at that if you can't talk about it. It's all right.
Clay Mann, who I worked with, that's been announced. He's writing his own thing. Elsa, who I work with on Lover Everlasting, she's doing her own thing for Distillery. Greg is doing his own thing now. Basically, at the end of the day, it's just going to be me and Mitch, and then we're going to be the last one. Oh, and and Joelle's doing her own thing. It's a horrible trend. I hate it. Yes, I cannot wait to see this. He is a huge Conan the Barbarian fan. He's already done. He's doing alternate covers for us, which are beautiful. Go on my Instagram, see the alternate covers he's doing for Helen. He loves Barbarian stuff, and a Barbarian Batman from him is going to be the most beautiful book you've ever seen. And I cannot tell you how great this book is going to be and how much I wish it didn't exist.
Ever since his early work at Dark Horse and also other Marvel projects he's done, and of course Human Target, I love Greg's work. He made me fall in love with ice. He made me fall in love with a picture. I'm like Dana Andrews in Laura, where I mean, you just look at the way he drew ice in Human Target, and it's just like, how do you not fall in love with that moment? I'm right behind Christopher Chance, and it's like, yeah, I drink the poison. I
Tony
can't.
Daniels writing for himself. David Marquez did something
Yes.
for himself. It's like a disease. I don't like it. I don't enjoy these talented people who have two talents. You should have one talent like me. You should just have one thing you can do. Two things.
I look forward to your answer to this because I don't think Lewis is reading everything you're writing. But Lewis Headache says, in your recent works such as Supergirl, Danger Street, Wonder Woman, it seems you're avoiding inner monologues and using outside narration to do the talking. Is that a creative choice?
It is a creative choice, yes. But that's not true of every single thing.
Right. Animal Pound has a lot of inner monologue.
Yes, Animal Pound has a third-person narrator who kind of can get inside the voices. I'm trying to keep it different in each project. I'm trying to weave in each one. So there's a lot of different kinds of narrations. Supergirl and Helen both have what I would call sort of the Sherlock Holmes narration, or the Great Gatsby, if you want to be more highfalutin. The idea of sort of an observer who's in the room and who's watching you, a Watson or a Nick. And Wonder Woman has the villain of the whole thing is the narrator, and he's sort of telling a story. I kind of think of that as what's that Mozart's villain in Amadeus?
Salieri.
Salieri, yeah, the Amadeus, the Salieri version of this, where he's sort of
Murray Abraham,
F. Murray Abraham being, So that's a sort of different thing, and all these are I like to do different voices. So like obviously, Supergirl is being narrated by a very pretentious 12-year-old girl who's talking kind of an Old West way, and Animal Pound is told in a very British or sort of Orwellian tone with sort of simple, clean sentences. The Sovereign talks. He can't stop using these goddamn words from the thesaurus where he can't say she felled me, she debased me. He has to use like fancier words. In Penguin, I do a thing where every single person but Penguin has inner monologue. So the waiter has inner monologue, the girlfriend has inner monologue, the Batman has inner monologue, but Penguin doesn't have inner monologue. So you see 1,000 different people, you can see everyone's thoughts, but you can't see inside the main characters. But I just did a very big book that had a ton of inner monologue, which was called Human Target, where you were just directly inside his brain. And then I did another book that had a ton of inner monologue that was called Gotham City Year One, which were both sort of, they're different because Human Target is a little more stylized, a little more George Clooney, a little more Ocean's 11, more 60s, per pound. And Bradley, that's like that core noir sort of, Hemingway, Goodis. Who else is a style? Hamnet,
Chandler.
Yeah, just the facts, man. Kind of thing. So yeah, I'm pinging around from different ways to do different dialogues. I don't know if it's famous or what, but Batman has a ton of inner monologue and throughout his whole history, and I decided to do none for my 85 issues that I wrote with him. So yeah, that's where I definitely threw out the window just to shake it up and to make sure that I was always showing and not telling.
Before we get into the other books, this is an alternate cover, but I love Wonder Woman, and the fifth issue where we both see Wonder Woman and Sarge Steel assembling their teams.
Yes,
that will be facing off against each other, and I loved in Wonder Woman the various battles between Yaga and Donna and Cassie. And all these great Wonder Woman acolytes that are fighting Wonder Woman in various forms of battle. And of course, it's the 5th issue, and 6 is coming out soon. But when Donna and Wonder Woman are basically playing Street Fighter, a DCU version of Street Fighter, I thought was hilarious. But really, Cassie's arm wrestling with her, Yaga, and her. Yara. Yara. But Yara, I love that they're doing classic Amazonian sort of battling and stuff. No, it's that was a lot of fun. And Sarge, like I said, assembling the villain team and everything. It's that's going to be great when the two teams clash.
It was very fun. I wanted to do my classic issue, two armies about to come together. I don't know, why does it make me think of Les Mis? I don't know, like One More Day, but the idea. Yeah, and that's what this issue was. It was also like each issue is supposed to. Wonder Woman is not. I deal with sort of deep and big themes. The big theme of Wonder Woman is that Wonder Woman is awesome. That's the big deep theme. And each issue is to highlight sort of a different aspect of her. That's awesome. So the first one is her as the rebel. The second one is her as the soldier. The third one was her solving a problem and defeating an army without basically throwing a punch, although she does throw her tiara at one point. So, and the fourth one was compassion, where she finds this young boy who has cancer, and this issue was to show her as a leader. And like all great leaders, she doesn't want to be a leader. She wants to do it alone. She wants to take the risk upon herself, and that's what causes her the conflict with the Wonder Girls who want to stand by her and stand with her and be with her. And so that's what this issue was about. And on the flip side of that, I got to sort of bring back Wonder Woman's villains, and people, are you going to kite man some of these villains? I was like, I'm going to kite man all the villains, man. She's got an incredible rogues gallery, and I want to highlight how cool they are, because each of them has stuff. And this is just the beginning. I mean, all of them will get, as long as they keep me on here, we'll delve into each of these. But I didn't want to just give you another I'll give you 6 issues of Cersei and then a big break, and then you get 5 issues of the Triangle Man and then a big break, and then maybe bring Grail in issue 55. I feel like I'd be cheating the audience a little bit so I was like, I'm bringing in 6 right away of these big and showing you what makes them cool, each with one page. Awesome. So, yeah,
that's cool. Michael wants to know, have you talked with Josie Campbell about Amazon's attack on coordinating the books? And also, Michael was very impressed, as was I, about her TV show, My Adventures with Superman.
I have not joked with Josie Campbell. I love her stuff. I have a fantastic editor, Brittany Holzer, and she does all of the coordination. She is the Wonder Woman guru at DC Comics. Brittany and I have been working together since Mr. Miracle. That's how far back we go. She was my editor on Mr. Miracle, and she is in charge of the Wonder Woman, of everything that is Wonder Woman, and she knows more than I will ever hope to learn. So she does all of the coordination.
That's cool. I like what Dylan says here. Wonder Woman 5 was a great story about learning to accept while not wanting to be a bother. I very much needed to read that. And also, Casey, I agree. Cassie's Princess Girl monologue blew me away. Yeah, that's one of the first Cassie monologues or character moments where, to me, she really stood out. I don't know why, and I'm sure I missed some other Young Justice and Titan moments of Cassie, but it really, to me, it's like, yeah, that was cool. And again, all the Wonder Girls are just fantastic in this story. So yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight, sort of each of them and show what differences to each of them. Sort of Yara being more brass, more young, more arrogant, and willing to like throw Wonder Woman under the bus.
You're old, lady. Exactly.
And then and Cassie, she's the one who doesn't have all the confidence in the world, who's kind of still learning who she is and what she's about. I love Cassie's Teen Titans run that Jeff did when she was sort of falling in love with Tim back in the day, and I just thought that was such a good. So that's where sort of my Cassie love comes from. And then Donna, who is the sister who knows you better than anybody else and knows who your weaknesses are, and is also a Titan, and that's sort of finding. So just because I think it can be easy for people sort of to lump them together and for them not to have individual personalities. Not that it's always done, but it can be an easy trap to fall into. It's a trap I didn't want to fall into. No, so, yeah, writing Cassie was an absolute joy. I think she just pops off the page, and her costume and Daniel did some little tweaks to it, making everything better as Daniel Simpor does. I just think she has a great history. The next issue, I just signed off on it today. One of the thousands of things I had to do today is one of those. I said these are it's a big issue. I've said about 4 or 2. So what do I know? But it's a huge fight issue. It's a big action issue, which we haven't, we've gone away from. So, and it's going to get you talking. It's epic in every sense of the word. It's the climax or the end of our first arc. It'll be the end of the first trade. And it's a hell of a cliffhanger. And it's like I said, every issue is about how Wonder Woman's great. This is about how Wonder Woman is an awesome superhero fighter. So we're going to show Wonder Woman just fighting as a superhero.
Outstanding. Vengeance wants to know, in Wonder Woman, Sovereign seems like a big villain. So does he have his own elite group of powerful metahumans to do his dirty work on his behalf? Like Magneto, Apocalypse, or Mr. Sinister all have teams?
Sovereign, who is the secret president or king of the United States, doesn't need a superhero team because he has the United States of America behind him. He hasn't had to be present or in your face because he's been slowly manipulating everyone all this time. It is only in making this move against Wonder Woman, this sort of desperate move to take her down, that he's coming out of his shadow, which is eventually, with all villains, the light will melt them. So at this point he has not, but he needs it. He definitely needs it because he's going up against someone he can't control for the first time, not only in his life, but in the life of his family, who's sort of controlled America since 1776 or before.
Interesting. Phoenix 720. Does your version of Wonder Woman feel old mentally? Because I always forget how long she's been around, but never feel like she is her age.
It's tough with Wonder Woman, right? Because she is older, but she's also the youngest person on an island of eternal life. So she's, the only child, and everyone else there is 4,000 years old, and she, depending on how you look at it, she's 100 or so. And I always think of her as coming off the island and meeting Steve when she's, mid early 20s, and now she's mid early 30s because it's been about 10 years since then. That's how I think of it in my head, in terms of her not her actual age, but in terms of her mental age. And that's influenced by the movies. I'll never get Gal Gadot out of my head. I just think she sort of perfectly portrayed that character in the first movie, and as an origin story. So yeah, that's how I think of her now. So someone who sort of came off the island in her mid 20s and now is in her mid 30s.
Michael wants to know, are there 3 current DC artists with whom you've never worked but have a burning desire to?
Oh my God, that's putting me on the spot. What do you consider to be I'd love to work with Bruno Redondo, comes to mind. I don't know. It's like, who do you consider to be a DC artist?
Well, how about Dan Mora? Wouldn't you like to work with Dan Mora at some point if you haven't already?
I keep telling them Mark Waid is a card carrying Nazi, and yeah, he's much older than he looks. He was around since then. Why do you think he writes so many anti-Nazi books? That's because he's just covering up. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, Dan. I don't know. Dan Morris scares me because he draws so fast. Like, I don't know if I could get scripts out fast enough. So
Sure.
But Dan Morris would be fantastic. I don't know. Jorge Jimenez.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there an artist I don't want to work with? That's the better question.
That's the better question. I can appreciate that. Jared, as we maybe transition to the Penguin, loving the Penguin series, curious about The Help. What inspired you to create this character?
Well, when I left Batman, sales immediately went up, which I found insulting, all you fans out there. I just want you to know. No, they didn't go immediately up. They went up when James was smart enough to create new characters for Batman, which I had not done over my 85 issue run. Now, I did create Gotham Girl, and she set the world on fire. She's the #1 hero. She's in all the movies and TV shows. No, nobody cares about. I envied James because he was doing something with Batman that I didn't do, and I thought was so smart, where he added to the mythos and he added his own characters. And James was creating young female characters, and so I was like, I want to add some mythos. I want to create something. And he's had so much success, so I'm just going to create the oldest, whitest guy you can find. That was part of it. I just felt I hadn't created something good, and I was working with Marquez on this book, Batman Killing Time, which is out in trade. Please check it out. It's a great book. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar loves it. That's just an odd fact of my life. I had. I was working with the Penguin, and he needed to do a delivery, and I had a guy come to the door, and I was just describing like a Penguin minion. I was like, well, he's a Penguin minion, so he'll be in a tuxedo, and he'll be really old, and he'll be very. And then I saw David's thing. I was like, oh, I like this guy. I was like, what's his story? And then his story kept going in my head. I was like, oh, he's like the ultimate trainer guy. Like, he trained everybody, like and he has all these background stories of like what it was like when Black Canary was a kid and all that stuff. And so then I started building it off that. It was building off of Marquez, off of David's designs, and my brain just going wild. And soon and he talked in this kind of prophet. And I'd been writing Alfred, and I famously killed Alfred by accident. So I was like, it kind of was like, what if I made an evil Alfred? And that's what it became.
Yeah. How about Black Spider in Penguin? Is that a new character?
That is not a new character. That is a Jerry Conway creation from 1977 or something.
I missed it. Sorry, Jerry. I totally missed. I was reading back then, I think.
He's an old school Batman villain. There are some polls in Penguin in the first 6 issues of when Penguin puts his team together. That's I don't know if you know about the Force of July, but that's an old poll.
I remember them. Sure.
His consigliere, who's this owner, is Lisa St. Clair. Now, like, that doesn't mean anything. Lisa St. Clair was the star of a soap opera comic that Barbara Friedlander probably wrote back in 1968 that DC did in the pages of Love Story. One of their love books. They did like a 20-page arc, a 20-issue arc about Lisa St. Clair, and she was the rich scion of a millionaire family. So I took her and made her a sort of a modern day noir person. And then the Black Spider is an old Jerry Conway bad villain. I called Jerry because we were going to use him, and Jerry and I talked for an hour sort of about Black Spider and where he's going and how how to make good comics. And it was an absolute wonderful talk. It's hard to I was very intimidated talking with him. It's hard to talk to the guy who killed Gwen Stacy and not be like, oh my God, like there's probably like 500 pop culture moments that are super important to all of America, and he created one of them. So I mean, it's just amazing talking to that guy.
Every time I talk to Jerry, it's always fulfilling. And much like putting you with Dave Gibbons on one of our online conventions.
You put Bendis with him.
I put Bendis.
I watched the show, John.
I know you do. And that means a lot. And truly, I was very proud of putting them together because just like you, I know how excited Brian was to talk to Jerry. And again, two guys that wrote Spider-Man, Justice League, Superman, so many characters in kind that it's like, but two very different perspectives on all that stuff. And it's like, there's going to be amazing conversations with these two.
And Jerry co-created Firestorm, who, when I was a kid, I thought Firestorm was, like it was like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Firestorm. Like I thought he was on, because I was a fan of the cartoon, and he was a big part of the cartoon. He was like an introduction character.
Superpowers. Yeah,
Superpowers
series. Yes.
Superpowers, yeah. So.
Meanwhile, in the Hall of Justice. This is interesting.
That's Mary Tyler Moore, right? That's
Ted Knight, absolutely.
I
forget who took over for him, but yeah, certainly in the first couple of years, using his telepathic communication powers, Aquaman. We called him Aquaman, not Aquaman. Great Ted Knight.
You do a good job of that.
Oh, Lou, help me, Lou. I had at one of my sports radio stations.
I think we do Ted Knight impressions on it.
I had a buddy whose name was Lou, and I would either do Ted Knight saying, Lou, help me, Lou, or I would do Chief Wiggum and go, that's some mighty fine producing, Lou. Yeah. So good stuff. Oh, yeah, and I guess Challenge of the Super Friends, right? I was thinking of Superpowers, but yeah.
Challenge of the Super Friends.
Indeed, absolutely. Michael said I read the Chip Zdarsky backups that I guess comprise Penguin Zero, but I haven't started your Penguin.
Compromise, I like that.
Yeah, I screwed up. In the backups,
how dare you not start them yet? My goodness, that's it. I'm walking out.
In the backups, Oswald gets a new regular nose. I'm envisioning you taking that away from him.
There was some discussion on his nose and how sort of small to make it, and that he'd had surgery. And by the time the first issue came out, his nose was normal sized. It wasn't like cartoon long sized. So yeah, I think maybe he's had some nose surgery, but not a lot. He's looking a little more Tony Soprano, the way Raphael de la Torre draws him.
Yes.
Just a stout, mean man, which I love. I'm writing Penguin just today, and it's a joy. The next two Penguin issues, which if you haven't been reading Penguin, you should. It's great, but you can wait for the trade, or the TV series is coming. You can buy it when that comes out. The whole idea behind Penguin was when the TV series came out, we'd have two trades for you on the shelf. I mean, that's the goal of the whole thing. But the next two issues, and I'm going to mispronounce his name, but it's the guy who did the
Stefan Sejic.
Yes.
Who is a frequent viewer of Word Balloon and always flatters me that he does watch the show, but go on.
He did the next two issues, Penguin 6 and 7.
Wow.
And I think it's some of the best things I've ever written or done or been associated with in terms of comics. Like these two comics, he draws them in sort of this Frank Miller, more abstract style. You don't have to have read any of Penguin to read them. They're two flashback comics about the first meeting of Penguin and Batman, and sort of parallel what Mitch and I did with Joker, and they're stunning. Sometimes I read my work, I was like, this did not come together. I could have done better, but these two issues, I was like, oh man, this is okay. This is pretty good, and it's a brand new take on Penguin. It's the idea was to explain to myself and to the readers why Batman allows Penguin to exist. If Penguin is the head of Gotham crime family, if he's this bad guy, why does Batman allow him to sit in the Iceberg Lounge and sort of do his things? And it was an answer to that question, and I think the answer is going to shock people, and it changes sort of everything you think. It changes everything you're going to think about the character. I'm pitching you like a movie poster, but I think these issues are something special. So Penguin 6 and 7, or just keep your eye on that. 6 comes out next week. It'll be out next Wednesday.
Yes, next week. That's right. In fact, I think this is the cover. Yes. That's
yes, that's the Raphael cover. That's not the other. That's So you'll see this. The Septic cover is something different and crazy.
That's cool. Let's see here. Couple good questions. Let's see. First of all,
different questions.
Different. I'm assuming that's Texas Minds. Says making my way through Love Everlasting. I'm really enjoying it, especially issue 4.
Yeah, 4 was good.
Are set in Wonder Woman. That's not Wonder Woman. Set in World War One, of course.
Yes, I think 4 is the best of the first 5 issues. But I will say that the second trade I think is the best thing I've ever written, just in terms of pure writing skill. Not in terms of connecting with an audience or in terms of getting the emotions right or everything, but just in pulling off something that was hard to do as a writer. The second volume of Love Everlasting, I think, is the best ever done.
James wants to know if you were ever given a DC alternate Earth book, which Earth would you want?
Oh my God! I'd have to get the Grant Morrison out and look at all 52 of them. They're all the best. Which Earth would I want? I don't know. The one where they're all vampires. The one where they switch genders. Which one I would want? I will. This is an easy question now that I think about it. I am a huge Mark Gruenwald Squadron Supreme fan. That's my shit. It's the first comic that kind of matured me as a writer, where I was like, oh my God, this is what comics can do.
Sure.
If you haven't read it, it came out in 1985, and to me, it is the definitive word on the question that we're still asking today, which is, what is the difference between a superhero and a fascist? That's the question that's constantly being asked in superhero comics and in movies and everything. I think Mark Gruenwald and Paul Ryan, I believe, did the art on it, or most of it. Maybe Butch Geist. And so I would do, if I had to pick a world just to respond to one of my heroes, I would pick the DC world that looks like the Marvel world. And since obviously Squadron Supreme, for people who don't know, was a joke that DC writers who were currently at Marvel wanted to write the Justice League. I think it was Roy Thomas. And so created the DC universe within the Marvel universe and called it Squadron Supreme instead of Justice League. I would do the opposite and do the Marvel version of the DC Comics world and do my own Squadron Supreme. There you go.
I like it. No, I like that a lot. Let's see here. Oh, somebody suggested that you writing a Firestorm mini would be perfect. Yeah, Vengeance said that.
I was once in a retreat, and Firestorm. I think Bendis was at this retreat. Maybe Bendis' first retreat. Josh Williamson was definitely there. And Jeff Johns raised. He's like, Firestorm. How do we fix Firestorm? And I pitched something in the room. I can't remember what I pitched, but I was like, this is what it's got to be. And Jeff like, no, that's terrible. What are you thinking?
And also, would it be Ronnie Raymond as Firestorm? Well, of course, he now merges. I don't even know the current status. If Jason and Ronnie now merge and become Firestorm, because it always bummed me out that they got rid of Professor Stein. And I don't mind Jason. I like Jason, but I really miss Professor Stein being there. In
talking to Jerry, I don't know if letting too much in, but I talked to Jerry about Firestorm. We talked for a while, and about sort of his portrayals in media and all that. And he said to me, the key to the whole thing is the Professor. It doesn't work without the Professor. He has to be part of it, or else it's not Firestorm. So I mean, I'm not gonna. If the creator says that's the way to do it, that's the way I would do it.
I hear you. I appreciated what they, especially given that it started with Ronnie on Legends of Tomorrow, and I like the idea that Jason came in, and that it was Professor Stein and Jason. But the actor they got to play Legends, forgive me, everybody, I couldn't understand. He was a British actor, I believe, doing an American accent. I couldn't understand him. I could never understand. I'm like, what is he saying?
I didn't watch Legends. I can't help you.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But no, I didn't realize that Penguin was a maxi series, and that's great because I was expecting to end it with 6, and it's like, oh no, stories continue.
It'll end with 12. It ends with 12. It'll be.
Dylan wants to know: would you ever consider doing a Roy Harper book about his years as an agent for Argus, a la your Grayson book?
I would never say no to any book. I mean, yeah, I want to do a Roy Harper book that's just about that time he killed all the people with the cat. I think that needs to be discussed. He was in an alleyway and he blacked out and woke up and he realized he had killed like 20 people using a cat as a weapon. And I think that's a maxi series right there.
I want a behind this like a VH1 behind the scenes all about his fantastic band in the 70s called
the arrows.
Nope, has nothing to do with arrows.
Oh, the quivers.
Great Frog.
Great Frog.
Great Frog.
Oh.
Not Great Frog, but Great Frog. Absolutely. Very 70s prog rock sounding name for a band. But I love the fact that Roy was in a band for all those wandering, the post injecting himself wandering years.
Yeah, him and Jones from the Marvel universe.
Yeah, I gotta get my head together, man. After my fall, I love Roy, and even when guys like was it James that wrote the story of him waking up and he killed everybody with a cat? James Robinson. I can't remember.
I don't remember who wrote. But yeah, that's brilliant. Wouldn't that haunt you for your whole life if you killed a bunch of people with a cat?
You would think.
Every time you saw a cat, you'd be like, oh no.
And by the way, as we're teasing Mark Waid, that Titans flashback miniseries he did in the World's Finest Titans thing was just so great. And everybody
is killing it at DC. He's doing unprecedentedly relevant and gorgeous work for a man who's been a legend in this industry for a long time. It's hard to be a comic book writer, but to toot my own horn. It is so hard to leave a company and then come back and be like, here I am still relevant. Here I am still cool. Here I am doing things you've never seen before. That's running a 4-minute mile. What Mark's doing is brilliant, and I can't speak highly enough of it. I love his comics. Not only do I love his comics, I have a 9-year-old child who loves his comics. So if I can read a comic and then give it to my 9-year-old and he loves it too, that's the right way to write DC Comics. And Lord knows I do it the wrong way because nobody wants to give Penguin to a 9-year-old. Someone counted how many fucks I had in the last Penguin issue, and it was 76. So if you put 76 fucks in a comic, you're not giving that to a 9-year-old.
Barucci is watching, the man behind Dynamite, and it always means a lot when Nick.
Barucci owes me something. He knows what he owes me. I saw him at 1 a.m. at Comic-Con, and I asked him something, and I want an answer on that.
I want Barucci on the show. It always means a lot when Nick is watching, and I know he keeps late hours. But man, yes, please. In
the beginning of my career, as a nice thing, Nick gave me a page from a Green Lantern with Omega Men on it. I still have it. Isn't that the best?
That's fantastic.
Yeah, when we're still working on Omega Men, he's like, this is from one of their first appearances. I was like, oh, you rock. Anyways, he owes me. I have a question. He needs to answer the question. The pressure's on.
Barucci, and he wants to come on Word Balloon. Yes, please. I don't know if I have to arrange with Tom or your PR person. I had Christopher Priest on representing Dynamite and his really interesting Vampirella series before Christmas, and that was a great conversation. And yeah, so all right, Josh has a couple questions, and again, I will let you say as much as you can because they're involving your involvement with James Gunn. But he wants to know what it's like working with James, adapting your run on Supergirl.
All I can say is everything is wonderful and it's great, and you can be bored by that answer.
Are you working with Matt Reeves' Penguin live action show on Max?
Everything is wonderful and it's great, and you're getting bored with that answer.
There you go.
I know those are terrible answers to give you. I can't speak. If I had to speak about it, we'd have to get a publicist here. We'd have to get someone behind me. It would be a whole big thing. You wouldn't want it to happen.
Disclosure agreement.
Yeah, I just can't. I can't talk about it. I just except to say everything is great, and I'm super happy. That's all I have to say.
Vengeance. Has Tom ever thought about writing a team book? Although, of course, Omega Men is, of course, a great team book.
I wrote Omega Men. That was a team book. It was hard. I wrote Danger Street, which was not at all a team book, but I'll call it. But it had 24 characters in it, so at least it got around. This is the problem with a team book, and I think Mark got this question of why there aren't more DC team books. in your latest Mark Waid conversation, which I really loved. It was great. I was listening to it as I walked around. It's hard for artists to draw. They're hard. There's George Perez's don't grow on trees anymore. And if you want a really great artist on your books, they're not going to want a team book. If I want to try to get Smallwood to stop writing for himself, I'm going to be like, all right, you and I are doing Teen Titans next. He's going to be like, no, fuck, no, that's not going to happen. So that's the problem with team books is the art and getting out the books as fast as possible to you.
Kari, this is interesting. We're planning on doing a live read of the Batman Elmer Fudd special. How close to the Looney Tunes voices did you have running through your head with each of the characters?
Have you read the Neil Adams did a live reading of it?
I didn't know that. That's excellent.
You didn't know that? You must know that.
I didn't know that Neil did a live reading of Elmer Fudd and Batman. That's fantastic.
It is on YouTube. I had met Neil, but he had not remembered me. Very early in my career, I feel like people must know this. And so Fudd came fairly early in my Batman career. And I saw online Neil saying, I don't know who did this, as if my name wasn't written on it. But he's like, but this is my favorite Batman story in forever. And when Neil Adams says that to you, oh my God, that's a day. That's a day. And then he's like, and I want to read it out loud. And he recorded a YouTube video of him reading the comic book out loud, doing all of the voices. And it's absolutely wonderful. So
the chat agrees, so that's cool. All right, Michael.
But wait, did I imagine all the voices in my head? Yes, I did imagine them. There was a little more of probably a noir tint or a little growl to them than maybe normal. Yeah, as I was doing Elmer Fudd, I was, Lisa St. Clair or whoever it was. Lisa St. Cloud. Yeah, St. Cloud.
Not Lisa Silver, for God's sake.
Yeah, Silver St. Cloud. St. Cloud is a ripoff of Lisa St. Clair. That's where it comes from. That's why her name is so weird.
I'm not remembering the name. Is that from a noir film, Lisa St. Clair?
Lisa St. Clair is that character in The Penguin I was telling you about, who was in
old
the romance, the soap opera.
The romance thing. Sure.
Yeah, so that's Englehart making fun of soap opera comics. She's the same girl from the soap opera comics, and he moved her into Batman, but renamed her Silver St. Cloud.
I never knew that. That's fantastic.
They both have the white hair.
Of course, yeah. No. I get it. I absolutely get it. When he brought Dark Detective back and did the sequel story, and put in thought balloons of Batman's inner monologue and like, "Hang on, honey, I'm coming." And people are like, "That's so old hat," and it's like, no, that's comic books. Fuck you and your little sanctimonious that thought bubbles are old hat. It's like, no, it's a choice. And even I remember.
Love Everlasting. And I just read an issue of Wonder Woman that has thought bubbles in it, so they're still around. And I remember Bendis using it on Mighty Avengers.
Well, and Brian, and it's funny because a couple of years earlier, Brian kind of said the same thing, that it's old hat, and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's a choice. Who cares? And then he brought it back, and I loved it because Brian used it as a contrast to what they were saying out loud, it's like, I love working with you, and the thought bubble was, I hate this guy, and I'm so mad I'm working with him right now. So yeah, funny as hell, man. All right. Okay. Now, Michael Edmond wanted to know, and I wanted to talk about this because you wrapped it up last month. Why did you call the maxi series Danger Street?
I mean, I should give you a fake answer, but I like Michael. I'm going to give you the real answer. We didn't have a better title. It was originally called Atlas. I wrote it under the title Atlas, most of it. Atlas the Great was what it was originally called. And we pitched it as that. The pitch document says Atlas, because Atlas the Great it's based on first issue specials for people who don't know. And Atlas the Great is the first issue special.
Yep.
And was the sort of metaphor of what happens when the person who's holding up the world dies, as he does in the first issue of what is now Danger Street.
Yep.
And DC came back and said, we don't like Atlas the Great as a title. And then I renamed it Manhunter, which is, of course, one of the other ones, just because that's kind of a cool name with no thought behind it. And then that kind of got vetoed because it's not actually about the Manhunters. And then we just went back and forth in 1,000 different names. And I think I was using Danger Street almost as a joke. And they're like, that's the name that DC was like, okay, we'll settle on that. We just didn't have a better one. And then it became this kind of metaphor of the place where Lady Cop met the Dingbats. And then it's one of those things that kind of organically grew, and I organically grew just to kind of love it as like the place, because I mean that book, and that's why if you look at the design that Jorge Fornes did, is it's about connections. It's about sort of this truth. He designed the title sequence, and you see sort of these connections in the background. It's about how everyone sort of comes together and falls apart, and the idea that they all meet on Danger Street, almost like everyone meeting on Sesame Street, kind of appealed to me as a metaphor. And it was all about sort of streets, and there's the avenues that come off streets, and you go back to the main one. Yeah, so it became something, but it was not the first title for that.
I agree with Casey. Lady Cop is incredible. I certainly hope that other writers will pick up what you did with everybody that was in Danger Street, because it is. I completely agree with Barucci, and I'm trying to find your comment, Nick, where you said that Danger Street is such a. Here it is. Danger Street is one of the best books ever. The ability to weave everything is fantastic. I completely agree. I like complicated comics. As I told you when we were arranging to do this conversation, how much I love Christopher Priest's Superman Lost that just wrapped up. And it's like, no, I want. I mean, I like all kinds of comics, but if a comic, as Steranko said to Azzarello at One San Diego, I like reading comics where it takes me longer than a 10-minute shit to finish the book. Then I think you've actually made something. And it's true. I mean, it's like, listen, you can blow through some comics really fast, but it's the complicated stories like Human Target, like Mr. Miracle, like Danger Street, where it's like, no, I want to be challenged by my comics. There are some podcasters that disagree with me, and I say for you, there's a Bazooka Joe bubblegum wrapper waiting for you, and that's great. You go read that.
All kinds of comics are awesome. There are days that I just want to read Peanuts. There are days that I just want to read Garfield. I fucking love Garfield. But don't get me wrong, I've got 2 original Garfields right there.
But there's clever in those 4 panels of Peanuts and Garfield and things.
But yes, I tend to turn out some things that are inspired by the things I love, which, like I said, Squadron Supreme, Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen. These are the comics that really speak to me, and that they kind of they speak to the heart of our medium, what our medium can do, which is sort of to talk about the big things that are happening in our lives. So those are the comics I love. But sometimes I just want to have dinosaurs with jetpacks, something no Nazi Mark Waid wrote in a comic book.
Stop saying that. I totally know you're kidding, and he knows you're kidding. But yeah, in today's, I'm sure Bounding Into Comics is about to write a story about how Mark Waid is a Nazi.
He's not. He's the best.
Of course not. We love Mark. Dude, I just talked to him a week or 2 ago, and God, he's such a mensch, and I can't wait to hang out with him. He's going to be at. You're going to be. Are you doing Terrificon again this summer?
Your buddy Mitch did not invite me. I'm calling him out right here on this podcast.
Well, in fairness, I know.
I was there last year.
Yeah, you were there last year. Because even
loved it. I would not complain normally, but I had so much fun last year. It was my favorite con I went to all last year. I had a blast. I got to hang out with Walter Simonson. I got Ed Weezy.
Yes.
I bought great art. I saw Phil Hester. Me and Chris Claremont. I was Chris Claremont's intern. He doesn't remember a thing about it, but I got to hang out with Chris again and relive my old days when I was young, and he would yell at me, and he was yelling at me again, and it was wonderful.
Well, I will say in fairness to Mitch, because he has told me this before, and even people like Howard Chaykin that love doing Mitch's show, he's like, I don't like having people every year like yourself, like the A-listers. He's like, I want to spread them out. And I don't blame him. I mean, so even Howard wanted to come last year, didn't, but I know he and Wade are going to be there this year. So, and it's Wade's first time, and I know Mitch has been after Mark for years. And I'm always.
I encourage everyone to go. It's man. It's a fun time.
No, I completely agree. Oh, Daniel, I'm so glad you said this. I haven't had an opportunity to watch the first episode yet, but Daniel wants to know thoughts of Clive Owen as Sam Spade. any new or old noirs you've watched recently and enjoyed. But let's talk about Clive Owen. It's called Monsieur Spade. It's on AMC. Everybody.
Yeah, it's like Sam Spade in Paris. I wonder how they got the rights set and how I wasn't involved. That's what I want to know mostly.
And it's 10 years after the events of the Maltese Falcon.
I haven't seen it. I've heard mixed things. I hope it's good.
Me too.
That's my opinion. I just watched the new True Detective season. That was great. Just watched the Fargo finale. That was amazing. And I just finished Battlestar Galactica rewatch. Those are the 3 TV things I'm doing.
God, I love that show. I'm right now I don't have Peacock. I'm waiting for the new series, and then
how can they reboot that? Where is there to go? My job as a professional, my actual professional job is to look at IP and think, oh, there's something there. To be like, oh, Lady Cop, there's something there. There's nowhere to go with that. You can't go into religion. You can't go into race. You can't go into aliens. You can't go into desperation. That show covered every single facet of that concept and covered it well and epically. Where are they going to go with that?
Well, that's why I appreciate the ambition. It reminds me of when I got to meet Harold Ramis, and it was when the first Analyze This was coming out. And I said, what do you want to do next? And he goes, I really want to revisit. Now I'm blanking. Peter Cook and Bedazzled. Peter Cook and Dudley Moore did the original with Raquel Welch. Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley did the remake. And I'm like, really? That is such a Peter Cook, Dudley Moore vehicle for their humor. And he said, that's the challenge. Now, I don't think he succeeded completely with there are parts of the Bedazzled Brendan Fraser movie that are okay. But, and again, Harold Ramis, comedy genius. I will take the chance and roll the dice. But by the way, Pete Tomasi, don't you have better things to do than watch my bullshit, Pete? But he says the Fargo finale was great. I'm assuming he's here for you, Tom, because Pete's
Fargo finale was. If people haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil too much of it, but basically they wrap everything up about in 30 minutes, and there's another 30 minutes to it. And they have like one scene that lasts like 25 minutes, and it's one of the best scenes in the history of Fargo. It's an absolute incredible finale scene that sort of sums up everything of what Fargo is about in one long scene. I loved it.
Tomasi, nothing better than watching.
Well, again, Tomasi, that's a mensch. That's
Pete,
a guy.
Come on the show, man.
And a brilliant writer. Can't wait to see what he does for Jeff.
Pete Seeley, Mike Barr, Denny O'Neil, and Jim Starlin did one of my absolute favorite panels at Terrificon, and it was all about Robin.
What did those 5 people do? Yes, I listened to that. You recorded it, or somebody recorded it.
I recorded it, and it's truly one of my favorite panels of where it went and everything. God bless you, Pete. Absolutely. No.
Pete's the best Nightwing writer of all time. He knows that. I said that to his face.
I completely agree, and I tell my good friend Gigantic Jeff, who loves Nightwing, who never read Pete's run, and I'm like, you don't know what you're missing. And especially, he's not even in right now, and I'm like, Taylor has been killing it on Nightwing. I'm like, you got to read it, man. It's
Pete's one of those guys. He can pick up any character and just make a compelling story. Like I was telling you about when you pick up a Peacock, you're immediately into it. You're just like, oh, I love these characters. I want to be in this story. I like this plot. You're just off to running. I think he's one of the brilliant writers of comics.
Well, and as Mike said, Super Sons was so good. I completely agree.
Of course, that's why I'm ripping it off in the back of Wonder Woman comics.
Yeah, I just want you to be aware of what everybody's, and I'm sure you're reading the chat as well. But I just want you to be aware of everyone's saying. I just read Tomasi's Outsiders run. Really good stuff.
We're turning this into a Tomasi podcast. Oh my God.
We could all be nice to people.
What the hell happened?
We were nice to Barucci for a minute. We could be nice to Tomasi.
As long as we're not nice to Mark Webb.
Guys and women creators that watch Word Balloon, it is the greatest compliment when Gail shows up or shame on me right now. I'm because I'm tired.
You're just listing people who aren't showing up here because they hate
Shelley Bond. Shelley Bond shows up and watches. I mean, these are some of my favorite people. Oh, thanks, Nick. Nick's leaving. And but yeah, thank you, buddy. You're a very nice guy. And don't worry, Pete, we're done. We're not gonna we won't make you blush anymore. But no, man, these are truly, when I see them, it's the first thing I tell them is it means so much that you guys watch and listen to my bullshit, because it is. And but it means a lot. I try, and everyone who listens and watches, I appreciate you. Certainly my Patreon followers that actually do fund Word Balloon. I genuinely appreciate your support as well.
I am a Patreon follower. Please sign up, John. It's worth every penny.
Yeah, God bless you. Well, and again, there's room for this kind of conversation. I really, someone was on Facebook and they brought up, is there comic book journalism? And their point was more exposing what they feel are bad business practices or whatever. And I'm like, and I don't want, Tom doesn't have to comment on this, but I always quote John Hickman, who says different comic books are on the same shelf for different reasons. There are some companies that are exploiting their own intellectual properties, and they're doing it through comics. There are others that are licensors and licensees. And the good news is there's a real effort to make good comics up and down the publisher world, whether it's new original ideas from people like Vault and other comic book companies, IDW we mentioned before, the various companies. Mad Cave is doing a great job, but also the licensees like IDW with the Star Trek books and so many like Barucci with a lot of what he puts out through Dynamite. And it's like at least they're giving these books to creative people that want to write and draw interesting stories. I made the Bazooka Joe joke earlier, but we really could be facing a lot of really bland comics that don't try hard. And I think everyone is trying hard to write and draw good stories. And it is my pleasure to give them a platform to talk about the books that I like. That's just me. What can I say? That's all.
I love this medium. Comics are in a not troubled position now, but the problem was that we did so well during COVID. It's hard to come back from that. It's suffering our own success. But I'm incredibly optimistic about where comics are going. I think we're about to head up. I think the interest rates are finally stabilizing, which will help all the comic book stores with their rent and with all that stuff, and that's going to help boom the economy. And also, I just think there's big stuff coming in the movies and TV that's going to get new fans into the stores, and I happen to know some of the stuff that's going to happen at DC at least, and I think it's just incredible what's coming up. So, yeah, no, we might be in a tough time, but I'm optimistic where we're going, at least to me.
I completely agree. Again, this is John saying this, not Tom. I don't know who is making the decisions above DC, what Discovery's thought process is from the executives above DC. That said, I really think, and Marvel's doing a great job too, but I know Kevin Feige, as the guy in charge of Marvel and the guy that Disney has made in charge of Marvel, he gets the product. He understands the value of Marvel. So we're getting great stories in Marvel. DC, I don't know what's happening above. And really, it's not just DC Comics. You see it on Max, the former HBO Max, and what is on HBO and Cinemax, and the cancellations of great shows and the pulling off of various streaming shows and things like that. All that said, DC is really at a great creative moment. There are so many wonderful books. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm talking to Dan Jurgens about him and Mike Perkins doing a 1939 Batman story for a Black Label book. I talked to Perkins last week about it. I'm talking to Dan tomorrow afternoon. I'm looking forward to it. I mentioned Priest and Superman Lost. And these are just the little things next to the monthlies. I just think everyone is really trying hard to make great comics right now. So financially, wherever we are in the comic industry, it's not the product's fault. But again, my 2 cents. There you go. This is funny. What is this? Cycle Cleveland says, it's John saying it, but can we be sure Tom isn't psyoping the words into John's brain?
No, you can't. I'm getting this all across. It's subtle, but it's hard. It's hard to psyop a Chicagoan. They're you gotta provide them with a lot of pizza.
I've always said when John Kerry was running against George W. Bush in 2004, I'm like, we need a Chicago alderman to push back on some of the claims that they were making about John Kerry. And John Kerry was too much on the high road. And you need a Chicago alderman to go, oh, you want to talk? Let's talk about you. Let's talk about all your BS. And you think that's smart? And again, we need a loudmouth Chicago alderman type. Those are like our assemblymen for other states and cities that have politics and stuff. But yeah, there you go. James says Tom making the same face as Mike Myers when Kanye told the world Bush doesn't care about black people. That is one of my favorite moments of live TV. I have to say, yeah, Kanye, that was amazing. So
whenever anyone you're with starts talking about the people who give you the money to put food on your table, you're always like, your brain's thinking 17 thoughts at once.
Greg McKean, believe me, I want to talk to Jason about this. And Doug Monkey really surprised me with how they're fun, their current Batman Off-World series. Speaking of great comics coming out of DC. Also, in a couple of months, we're going to get Batman Dark Age from Mark Russell and Mike Allred. And I just spoke to Allred, and I'm sure I'll be talking to Mark when that starts. Another great series. Or at least again, they were so great on Superman Space Age. And yeah, that beautiful Allred art and Mark is another guy that it's been a couple of years now, but after his great comedy comics for Ahoy and even he did the Hanna-Barbera stuff too with Snagglepuss. I'm so glad that Marvel and DC are tapping him for straight up stories, and I think it's great stuff. So, Pete, Sinister Sons, another reason you should come on the show and talk. Yes, please. That would be great.
Mark is wonderful. We always hang out at the Eisners every year, and we lose Eisners together and have fun. And he should have won Best Writer this year. I voted for him. No offense to James, but he already has 2. He didn't need a 3rd.
I read this in the Wonder Woman backup with Trinity. Is Gen S officially the new Trinity team name, or is it just a one-off with the latest backup?
This is one of those you guys have to tell me kind of things. It's hard to call. I can't call them the Trinity. We already have a Trinity, and also one of them's name is Trinity. So right. When I was writing that issue, I was writing my own general frustration and trying to find a name for this new thing. And I literally went with my kids around the table. We went through a bunch of, and I'm not going to say who, but someone high at DC has suggested Delta Force to me, and I thought that was so fun. I put it in the book as an actual option. The best we could come up with Gen S, which I kind of like. It sounds now. I did this before the Gen V sort of became a TV show. I've written very far ahead, so a little bit of our momentum was stolen by a TV show that was announced. But I don't know. Gen S
didn't make that connection, but go on.
Gen S sounds like something. My kids very much identify with the Gen Z. I have kids who are 15 and 14, and they very much like they know that is like a letter kind of thing. And Gen S sounds good because it kind of sounds like Gen X. But I hate that it's very Superman focused. But I did the Hope thing, and so I constantly have them. So if it catches on, if you guys use it, then it'll be the thing. If it's just nobody cares and we didn't think that's awesome, Tom. If it depends on whether it's a Gotham Girl or a Trinity. I think it's cool. I think it works. I bought a lot of Gen X comics when I was I want to say when I was a kid, but that came when I was like 17. So if you guys like Gen S it is. If you don't, we'll find something better.
And I really love the dynamic between the three of them, Trinity, Damian.
My God, with
Damian and adult John, very funny.
Honestly, in all honesty, I should not be writing that. There's a lot of comics I have. Because of the Hollywood stuff, I have too much work right now. I'm just like underwater with work. So I should not be doing those backups. But they are the most fun thing to write. They are an absolute joy. Belena Ortega is the artist on them. And she kills me with how she does the art, how funny it is, the expressions on everyone's faces. But it feels like I'm writing Calvin and Hobbes. I write the most serious, sad. I read the end of Vision and try not to kill yourself is like my endorsement of this book. Like you have to make an effort. You read the end of Vision, you're like, should I kill myself? I don't know. Like you have a thought.
That's scary. I'm with you. I get it, but no, it's
but so for me to get to write light and funny and try to get my best Pete Tomasi on for better. It was an absolute joy, and so I'm going to keep doing those, and we're going to try to combine them all into one volume. First of all, I have a 9-year-old and a son and a 13-year-old daughter. And it's the only comics I write that they want to read as soon as I write them. They make me explain the plots at the table, and I show them the lettering pass. And my daughter literally is like, "Oh, there's a typo there." Like, she helps me with it because she wants to see it so early. So it makes my kids, and it's so, and yeah. So we're doing another round of them. It's already been written. So the next one, it comes out in Wonder Woman the 6th. We'll be back to them being a kid. She's 6 years old again, sort of the Wonder Robin version of her. And it's a story of their babysitting her, and she won't go to sleep. And it's a direct telling of what my life is with my children. And should I tell this story? I'm going to tell this story. I saw Belena, and if you've read the recent one, there's a kangaroo race. And she's like, "Why'd you make me draw kangaroos? I don't know how to draw fucking kangaroos. I'm Spanish. I've never even been to fucking Australia." And I was like, I felt so bad. And so I was like, "What do you want to draw? Anything? What do you love?" And she says, "I love samurais and corgis." And I was like, "Oh my, how am I going to think of a story with samurais and corgis in it? That's like the biggest challenge." But anyways, in the next 3, you'll see some samurais and you'll see some corgis, and they are brilliantly drawn and brilliantly done. And yeah, I couldn't be having more fun with those backups. Eventually, I'm gonna write enough that we're gonna have a collection that'll be sort of a trade with, I don't know how many of them we'll do. They're 8 pages. We'll do like 20 of them, and you can give them to a kid and be like, "Why are there so many inside jokes about Final Crisis in this?" But but it'll be okay.
I didn't even think in Wonder Woman 5 that Donna and Diana are playing Injustice, but of course they are. That's pretty much.
I don't know legally what we're allowed to say they're playing. Daniel did a lot. Daniel and Brittany, my editor, worked a lot with legal and exactly how it could look. So I don't want to go over the lines. But Daniel is a big gamer, and he very much was excited for that scene and drew it absolutely perfectly. I love the idea that she's like, "How can I defeat Wonder Woman? Like, physically, like, what's the way to do it? What's the one thing she won't know?" And of course, video games. Like, that's. And then Donna hangs around with Gar all day, so she knows video games. And then, I'm complimenting myself here. What the fuck am I doing?
No, but I love what you're doing with Donna. I love what Tom is doing with Donna and Titans. And yeah, it's again like there's been like kind of an energy boost when it comes to writing Donna Troy lately, and I think it's been fantastic. So
and we're doing in Wonder Woman goes 1 through 6 with Daniel. And then we're taking an issue off or fill an issue, or I say a breather, because it's been intense. These issues have been intense. And so as Gillian Marsh is coming on art for issue 7. And there's no backups in it. It's just 30 pages of one story. And it's kind of, it's in the vein of people like the date night thing I did with Batman, where I had them all go on a date. This is a light issue where it's Superman and Wonder Woman go to a mall in space, a space mall, if you will, and they're looking for Batman's birthday present, and it's their adventures in a mall in space together, the two of them, and it makes me laugh. They go and see a movie. They go see Batman v Superman in 5D, and they don't know what 5D is, so they go in and it's just Mr. Mixoplixig playing every single role and yelling at them from the screen. That's the kind of humor that I'm channeling my Gilbert Gottfried impression while I'm writing it. It's wonderful. Anyways, that's coming up in issue 7. A breather, a pillow mint, or something just to take tonight off. Yeah, we're doing sort of a date night-ish story.
That's great. And I agree with Michael. Date night was such a great story. That's a story in my Batman run I sign the most. People tell me is their favorite issue. By far, it's not even close to number 2. And it was the issue I wrote that Dan DiDio called me afterwards and said, "What is this? I hate it." And I love Dan and I are friends. It's very nice. But yeah. I'll always remember that the one issue everyone loved was the one he's like, what is this? What is this thing? Well, and then by the way, good DiDio. But yeah, no, that's again, you and I both love Dan, and Dan's the guy who, like, I don't understand Dick Grayson. What's the point of Dick Grayson these days? And it's like, well, the entire DC nation that you have given a name to, as far as us all as comic book fans, completely disagree with you. And all right, I was wrong. All right, I admit it. What am I going to do? All right. So, that's awesome. This is interesting. Dom wants to know, did Clay ask you to read his new Batman book, Nightfire? And what did you think of it?
No, Clay has not asked me to read his Batman book. Clay is one of my best friends. I talk to him every single day of my life, and don't think I haven't asked quite a few times. I'm sure it's brilliant. I'm sure it's very good. He's doing with his brother Seth, who I also am a huge fan of.
Oh, wow.
And I cannot wait to read it, but I have not read it yet.
Okay. We haven't talked about Brave and Bold, your Joker story.
Oh, my God. How many books have I got coming out, John?
Yeah, I know. But also, people were wondering, obviously, I'm hoping that'll be collected eventually as a trade.
Yes, that's almost like it should be collected as a trade. It almost can't be read in issues. Not that it can't be. Then, so the final chapter comes out next week with me and Mitch. Mitch is my brother. We're attached at the hip. The best comics I do are with Mitch Garrett's. That's the way it's been for the last 10 years, and hopefully it's the way it'll be the next 10 years. And this was our Joker story. It was a parallel to go with our Riddler story, which won the Eisner for best comic of the year, I think, or best single issue. But because it's collected in an anthology series, because it came out in the first and the third and the sixth, it's hard to sort of keep track of it. And we realize that. So when the collection comes out, I'll be pushing it super hard. I think Mitch keeps telling me it's the best thing I've ever written. I don't believe a word he says. I just think he likes drawing what is on his thing. It's very spooky. It's very scary. It's a Joker that'll turn you inside out with what he does. A lot of stuff borrowed from the noirs we're talking about. And the last issue comes out and it is freaky and it ends freaky. And I got to write that scene I've always wanted to write since I was a little kid, which is sort of that once all the action is over, Batman and the Joker having a little conversation. I remember Scott getting to do it on a bench in his sort of last issue, and this is sort of my attempt to do that. I hope you guys love it. It ends with Batman and Joker fighting in a forest, and it's intense and mean and also a little funny.
Sounds good, man. Let's see. Here we go. Michael says, Adam? We always remember Adam stories. Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
Who doesn't remember Adam stories?
Absolutely.
The Adam?
Are we getting
Adam
a hardcover? Yeah. Are we getting a hardcover of Supergirl anytime soon?
They're working on the next Supergirl thing to get that out to stores as soon as possible. I don't think I'm allowed to talk about sort of the specs of it and what it is. I don't know if it's been announced. It has been announced. I don't know. But yes, something's coming. It's going to be big. It's going to have lots of new stuff in it. It's going to be even more beautiful in the version that's out now.
Pete points out Joker is going to be in public domain in 2036. But is the Emil Jannings the Man Who Laughs, I think was what it was called, that was the silent movie that is the inspiration for the Joker. I don't know if that's in public domain yet. If not, it should be imminently, if not this year or already, then in the next couple years. So I don't think you need to wait. I don't think you need to wait to do a version of Joker for it to be from the public domain. It's gonna be really interesting when Superman and Batman reach public domain. And we always have to point out, it was a big part of my conversation with Mark Waid, that you can only use what's in that first issue of Detective 27 and Action 1. There's plenty there, but like your Superman can only leap an eighth of a mile. He can't. And in fact, you see in the end of Action 1, he's falling in the sky with Lois in his arms. But and the same with that's why I'm curious to talk to Dan about this Batman story that's set, as Mike Perkins was telling us, a few weeks after Detective 27, and that very, very early iteration of both characters. I know Liefeld has been drawing his public domain Superman for that eventual period in I'm doing the math, 33 or 2033 rather. That's when Superman hits public domain, and Batman in 34. Yeah. Is it? Oh, Pete says Superman 2034, Batman 2035. Well, you're probably paying more attention to it than I am, man. So, and yeah, James says
he won't be able to fly. He won't have Jimmy Olsen.
No, but he's still Clark Kent. He's still working at the Daily Star. I would imagine. I always use Barucci as an example. You can't, as much as there's so much of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan that's in the public domain, and the Burroughs estate has trademarked the name Tarzan, so you can't call a comic book Tarzan. But Barucci does a Tarzan book called Lord of the Jungle, and within the book he calls him Tarzan, I believe. I haven't read it in a while, and I know Conan is in the same situation, the Robert Howard stories as well. But yeah, man, it's like and again, I know Titan. Is it Titan? I forget who has the Conan license right now. By the way, and I'm glad you mentioned Conan earlier. Jim Zub doing a great job on Modern Conan. I think
and that artist he's working with is gorgeous. My God,
so many great.
It looks like John Buscema. They just brought him back to life.
Yep. So many great artists have really. I remember when Kerry Nord.
But for legal reasons, I'm not working with Conan. My character is called Othin, so completely different.
I can appreciate that. That's okay. Right, James. You're right. Not only Superman and the Daily Star, but Lois also will go into public domain, and then original Joe Shuster design, which I love. I think it's terrific. I like the weird triangle of the Superman Delta, or however you want to call it. Yeah, good stuff. Oh, that's right. Pete is suggesting Purple Gloves Man public domain. Indeed, that's right. The Purple Gloves on Superman as well. By the way, I also love that Tim Sheridan in the recent Green Lantern comic about Hal Jordan, or rather, Alan Scott.
Yeah,
recreates the Action 1 scene, and it's Alan Scott as Green Lantern throwing the car like Superman is in Action 1. And I that goes back to James Robinson and his wonderful miniseries that he did, the Golden
Age. Oh, I love that series. God, that's so good.
And
one of the great endings in all of comics.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. But I kind of like that idea.
It ends with Captain Comet flying in because he's the first Silver Age hero. That's so smart.
And he's a kid. And it's so great because he's wearing the uniform, but he's brand new. So he's a kid and he just joins the fight because it's like, all right, I'm here. And I
think it's the best Manhunter. If you got a Manhunter comic, the Golden Age is probably my favorite Manhunter. There's just a treatment of Manhunter in that book. He's so badass in that.
Everybody is positioned so interestingly. Ted Knight, not Ted Knight, but Starman, or not Ted Knight.
That's that crazy.
Well, yeah, he's crazy, and his cosmic, thoughts are like bleeding in his head. But I meant Rex Tyler, our man. Who's like there with the test tubes. He's like, I'm not an addict. I'm not an addict. And it's like, of course you're an addict. Oh man, the best. Good Lord, yes.
Well, if you've got Paul Smith at the top of his powers drawing your book, you can do it.
Right? Michael, I agree. Johnny Quick is amazing in that book. Liberty Bell as well. Jonathan Law, the Tarantula is really interesting in that. Paul
Smith.
Paul Smith, of course. Thank you.
Of X-Men fame.
So goddamn good. Oh, this is interesting. Mike wants to know what the first comics were outside of the big two that you read. Were you a Richie Rich guy? Were you Archie? Oh
my God! Do you know how much my life is dominated by Archie now? Do you know this about me, that I'm drowning in Archie?
No, that's like Brubaker. Brubaker's ideal retirement is, I'm just gonna kick back and write Jughead stories. I'm like, that's fantastic.
A wonder. My kids are Archie obsessed, especially when the COVID thing, they became Archie obsessed, and they have not left it. And we have piles and piles, and they literally read every day Archie. It's in their lives. Every single day of their lives is Archie. They ask me, we talk about Archie story. Like I cannot get away from. We play Running Around Riverdale, which is a board game based on Archie. Is their favorite board game. So literally this weekend we were playing Running Around Riverdale. I was Josie and the Pussycats as my three characters. And I installed a Archie wall in my house recently. Where I bought a ton of Archie art and framed it and put it up. It's because they're so obsessed, and made it sort of a wall of my house. It's just an old Archie art, like this Dan DeCarlo and Harry Lucy stuff from the 60s.
Sure.
First non-big two comics, and that's. I started there. And if you get, we're not getting strips, right? Because I got into strips first. Like when I was a kid, I read, Garfield and Peanuts and that stuff like that. But what comes to my head is like the thing that really hit me from that was ElfQuest. ElfQuest hit me hard as a kid. Wendy Penny's ElfQuest.
Sure.
I had the colorized versions, bought them from the same bookstore my spinner rack was in before I went to, and I remember we took a long vacation, and I brought ElfQuest, and I just read them back. They had not only were they great comics, there was also just a little bit of sex in them, which is a big deal when you're 10 years old, And Yeah, I was a huge ElfQuest fan, as nerdy as that is, as a child. That's probably my
Not at
first
all.
big non.
Did you see the Ralph Bashki Wizards animated movie? Because it's very ElfQuest looking.
No, I don't think I've ever seen it. No.
Oh my God, you'd love it. Oh, if
I've hung out with Wendy Penny and told her that what a huge influence she is, and she's very nice and very cool.
That's
and I was
cool.
very intimidated being here.
Absolutely. Well, Roberts 100 says, yeah, heavy metal was also good for early comic book sex. I agree.
Yeah,
robot breasts. Yes, please. Exactly. Oh man, that's hilarious. Mike wants to know why they don't reprint Richie Rich comics. I don't know, man. That's Harvey. I don't know who owns Harvey these days.
I recently reread Brubaker's Last of the Innocents. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, in Criminal.
In Criminal, his Archie take.
Yep.
I mean, Brubaker and Phillips are just like, they're the standard that blows everyone in. But to me, that's their masterpiece. I think that's just one of the best graphic novels ever. It's just brilliant. If you're just looking for a fantastic, what depresses me most about it is like, Tom, what would you do with Archie? I would just have done what Brubaker did, but not as good. He turns Archie into a modern noir, where Archie has to kill Veronica because he regrets marrying her and wants to marry Betty, and it's brilliant. It's wonderful.
I will ask Maud's question, but I already know the answer. Can you tell us something about how the Lantern Show is going?
Everything is going great, and everybody's happy, and that's a boring answer.
NDAs. I'm sorry, everybody. I wish it were different, but it's not. They will serve no wine before their time.
There's no one who wants to talk about everything more than I want to talk about everything.
Yeah, it sucks. But honestly, Tom, and again, this is John saying this, not Tom. And I might have even said this to you in just conversation when we're just bullshitting with each other. When almost every week there's 3 or 4 items about Superman Legacy, and it's like, it's 2 years away. I don't need this much behind the scenes because there's not much they can say anyway, but it doesn't stop the nerd blogs from writing these articles. And it's just like, all right, whatever. I'll be happy.
I'm going to disagree with you, John, because first of all, it's not 2 years away. It's summer of 2025, which means a year from now we'll be inside the marketing bubble.
Okay.
We'll have previews and stuff. I mean, that's real soon. And
okay.
And I was, as were you, around for Batman 89 and how that just was the game changer of like nerd culture. And like all of a sudden the kids who would beat me up for reading Batman were wearing Batman t-shirts.
Yeah.
And I went and you go to McDonald's, you get the Batman mugs, and you go to Burger King, get the mag. Like I want that for this next generation. I want them to have a Batman 89 moment. I want Superman 25 to be that.
Sure.
And
Me
so
too.
I'm excited that people are like, what's this? What's that? What's that? Because I can feel it coming. I can feel that energy coming back. And that would be so important for comics and so important for geek culture. And it would be just, and I'm looking forward to that. And I want it to happen.
I agree with that. And again, it was a different world. It was a pre-internet world.
Yeah, it was more of a monoculture world. It's true. But there's still stuff in it.
But I hear you, because when that trailer came out for Batman 89, it was a holy shit moment just from the trailer. Because like, what is this? Look at that Batmobile. Look at Nicholson as the Joker. So many great, just literally seconds of that minute or however long teaser trailer was. And no, I agree, it was really, really exciting. But we're still a little away from that. So but again, I appreciate your point of view on that. All right, Greg has an interesting question. He goes, I've heard you say Booster Gold and Hal Jordan are the most fun characters to write in comics.
Yes.
What's the difference between how you write Hal Jordan versus Captain Kirk, of all things? That's interesting.
We're talking purely comics here. And there's no difference. I just write him as Captain Kirk.
That's interesting. I never picked up on that's how you're writing Hal. But I love it. Sounds good to me.
Hal he's fearless the same way Kirk is fearless, the same way he can have look into V'ger and bluff him. Like only Kirk can do that. We've talked about this before, but my favorite line from Star Trek is, why does God need a spaceship? He looks into the face of God and asks a question. That's who fucking Captain Kirk is, right? Like he's Captain Kirk is on my Mount Rushmore of just favorite characters in the history of anything.
It drives me nuts that the powers that be at Paramount are so, and believe me, it is Shatner's fault as well, but the way that they are like completely, and again, John's saying this, I don't like the way they're treating Captain Kirk on Strange New Worlds. I think Paul Wesley is a fantastic actor, but nothing about him reads James Kirk to me. And further, it infuriates me as a diehard Star Trek fan that they will throw up a pantheon of Star Trek lead characters, and Captain Kirk is never among them. And since the first Star Trek day, where big picture of Michael Burnham, big picture of Leonard Nimoy, big picture of Takei and Nichelle Nichols, and there's William Shatner as Kirk way in the background in this tiny postage stamp little picture, and the current one's not even there. And again, Shatner laughs at them. I know he's a difficult man. I know he's an expensive, difficult man. He's still the reason why we all watched Star Trek back in the day. And you can't deny that. And there's a reason why.
John, you would appreciate this more than anybody I know. I was watching the Emmys with my children, and commercials came on, and my children have no idea what commercials are because they stream things.
Sure.
And I put to the football game, and the football game was also on commercials. And then I was like, where do we go next? Because we never watched live TV. And I was like, I'm going to Buzzer because that's where I go when I'm. And it was Tattletales from 1972 or whatever with Burt Convy, and Shatner was on there.
Sure, Tattletales.
Shatner was on Tattletales. If people don't know, Tattletales, you go on with your wife, and they would ask you dirty questions, basically.
Yeah, couples questions, absolutely.
Yeah, couples questions, like when's the last time you were intimate? Like all these things you would not, and then they just all giggle about it. Like what's your wife's worst flaw? It was kind of like Honey. So it was so bizarre because there's Shatner, and my daughter, my son goes to me, because he's with his wife, and they're asking like, when was the last time you called your wife sexy, Bill Shatner? And my daughter's like, is that the wife he might have killed?
It might have been. Yeah.
That's what my daughter said. I was like, no, that's just nobody knows. I was like, get off Wikipedia. Just close the window.
No, it's sad but true. You're absolutely right about that. That's hilarious.
Anyway, so I highly recommend Tattletales with William Shatner as a in between time when you're watching the Emmys in the game and there's nothing else on.
All right, everybody that is asking movie and TV questions, please stop, because we've explained why he can't talk about it. So
I'm useless to you. You'll get the shittiest answers. They're not worth the.
It's only going to annoy myself and Tom seeing you guys say this in the chat.
I was saying, John, I don't find it annoying in the least. I would ask the same thing.
I guess
maybe you can find it annoying, but I
would
be as curious. I love that people are curious about this. They should be curious. It makes total sense.
It's great that people are curious, but I think the majority of the Word Balloon viewers and listeners are more educated on how this stuff works. So it's one thing for someone to go up to you at a convention and go, hey, I'm kind of a comic book fan, and I'm really excited about the TV and movie stuff. I understand you're involved. What can you say? Well, that's fine. But again, just stop, because I'm not even going to post the goddamn questions on the screen. If Tom wants to read them here, that's his, and again, everybody, I apologize. I love that you watch, and I love that you're enthusiastic and you're excited about all this stuff, but it ain't going to happen. So shut up.
What's the famous, both teams played hard? Both teams played hard.
Sure. James wants to know, have you checked out the Sandbaggers yet? The wonderful 70s British spy show that Rucka and I, worship at the altar of that show.
No, I have not. I know nothing about it. I'm useless to you. All I do is watch if I'm watching old shit these days, I'm just on noir. I'm on a big noir kick. I watch just 5 of them a week. I don't know. I've gone insane.
I'm pretty sure that the Sandbaggers is on Tubi.
So I gotta watch the commercials?
I got
flip the buzzer.
I know, fuck that. But no, and I'm surprised you've never heard me and Rucka talk about that show.
I'm sure I've heard you and Rucka talk about it.
It was his inspiration for Queen and Country.
Queen and Country,
yeah. And it's great. It's very Le Carré spy stuff, but it points out because the guy who created it really knew the intelligence world and it was never confirmed or denied that he was part of the intelligence world. But how the real life of a spy, kind of like Len Dayton and Ipcris File and all the Harry Palmer, Michael Caine movies, where instead of jet setting James Bond living this opulent first class life, it's like, no, man, spies are like in the shittiest hotels. What's her face from Mike and Molly, the female lead, her movie Spy, pretty much, oh yeah, I'm in Paris, but you're in the shittiest hotel with the cockroaches and stuff. And, the guy the main character is fighting with his bosses that please let my agents who are in the field fly first class instead of coach, because they need to be awake and alert when they're on their field missions and not cramped and, lack of sleep and stuff like that. Oh, it's such a wonderful show. There was only 3 seasons, and, British seasons, only 8 or 10 episodes a season. Great show. Wonderful show.
So I really like Queen Country. I recommend everyone buy it. I think it's that the early Greg Rucka stuff is just absolutely brilliant. I think his current stuff is brilliant. I think he's one of the great writers. I wish he'd write more comics. He's a fantastic Wonder Woman writer, for example. But I say that I remember listening to you, John, you interviewing Rucka about Queen and Country, 2006-7 ish.
Yeah.
And him going and at that point, because I heard it on, I was a Chris Niesman fan. We know Chris Niesman from one of the
Around Comics, absolutely.
Around Comics, and he would love that book more than he was such a Rucka fan, and he recommended it. And I really like Chris Niesman, so I bought it and read it. And I loved it. Thought it was great, fantastic spy stories.
Yeah.
And then I was listening to you and Rucka, and Rucka's like, I have a source, and this is how spying really is, and this is how it's done. And I was deployed by the CIA to a war zone at that time. Listening to this, I downloaded, and I remember thinking, is there another CIA that I'm not in? Because this is not what I'm experiencing.
Interesting. Sure. Wow.
I remember thinking that, being like, what? This is what it's really like? That's not my experience of it.
Sure.
But they're fantastic books. It just didn't line up with what I was going through.
Yeah, with your experience. No, I completely respect that. My God. Yes, Michael, Leandro Fernandez had early art in Queen and Country, absolutely. Among other great artists, Carla Speed McNeil did a fantastic arc of it.
It's a really good series. I still have my original copies that I got sent to me in that war zone that my wife bought off the shelf and sent to me in care packages, and I still revisit them. It's fantastic. And
to another Michael, Lazarus is written by Greg Rucka, drawn by Michael Lark.
Which I hate, because Michael Lark is. I begged Michael Lark to work with me more after we did an 8-pager together once, and I thought it was some of the most brilliant art I've ever seen. And he's like, "Dude, Rucka's my man. I'm not gonna go Rucka." I was like, "Ah, yeah, it makes total sense." Bummer.
Cosmo wants to know: are there any comics you would recommend all aspiring writers should read? By the way, I would put Queen and Country on any sort of list like that.
Yeah, there's hundreds of comics that I would think I do think it. I've done the soapbox before, but if you're coming into comics, you wouldn't become a filmmaker and not see, The Godfather, Lawrence of Arabia, 2001, whatever. Like there are certain touchstones. You don't become a director unless you've seen these movies. And I think in comics, if you're going to become a comic, you have to read the top 100 best comics. I mean, that's literally what I did when I was coming back to the industry. I went on every internet list and what are the top 100 comics, and I saw the ones that appeared over and over again that I hadn't read yet, and that's how I started reading comics with an X and doing the Crumb stuff. And I read Kirby's Fourth World, and I read the early Eisner stuff. But yeah, comics you have to read if you want to write. You have to read Watchmen. You have to read the 86 trilogy. Probably is the best place to start. You have to read Mouse, Dark Knight Returns, and Watchmen. Those are the first 3. Those are kind of the DNA of modern comics.
Agreed.
From there, Stan Lee's Spider-Man. You got to read Love and Rockets. You got to read. I don't know, what are the classics? I'll look at my shelf back here. My favorite comics.
We mentioned Jerry Conway earlier. We mentioned Steve Englehart and the Laughing Fish, Silver
Squadron Supreme. Mark Waid, if you've heard of that guy, he's got some. No, Kingdom Come. You got to read. Claremont Byrne, X-Men. It depends if you're doing superhero stuff. From Hell, basically anything Alan Moore ever did.
I agree with Ethan, who says Saga of Swamp Thing.
Peanuts.
Right. New Frontier, certainly. The Authority, absolutely, for widescreen comics. Michael is right. V for Vendetta. This is a great list. Absolutely. Here, Greg McKean wants to know, we mentioned Captain Kirk. Who are the other favorite characters that belong in that Mount Rushmore list?
Gosh, I don't know. My son made me a Photoshop picture of like me amongst all my favorite TV show characters, and it was me and Columbo and Captain Kirk and the cast of Friends, which is a show I like a lot.
I love it.
So that's not a very diverse group of characters, but yeah, those that would be a good place to start. I don't know.
No, that sounds great. My man, it's 1 a.m. your time. Are you tired? We can wrap.
If there's any little stuff, we can keep going. If there's not, that's all right.
No, not really. I mean, people are giving their comic recommendations.
All right, yeah, we can wrap. I can go to sleep. I have 17 deadlines. Daredevil Born Again, yeah, that's got to be on there. Helen of Wyndhorn, if that's a pre-order.
Oh, that's nice. Nick James says, Word Balloon got a shout out in the chapter I wrote about Kite Man for an academic anthology on Batman villains. Thank you, man.
Oh, I've seen that. He brought that to my table, and I got to see it, and it was awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. And I agree with the Unstoppable Bar. George Perez reshaped the Wonder Woman mythos. I completely agree.
Yep,
Certainly,
that's where I started. Sandman from Neil Gaiman. It's it was nice. It was nice for me when I came into comics that I had already been reading comics for 20 years. So that very much helped. I mean, Parker by Darwin Cook, Sin City by Frank Miller, Strangers in Paradise, Pluto, Blankets, BPRD. I don't know, what am I? I'm just naming them my favorite stuff. You got to read, the original Mad comics.
Sure.
Too much.
Nick hopes you liked his book. James, I agree. Scott Pilgrim was great. Greg wanted to know who the voice of the cowboy was when you were writing him for Love Everlasting.
Probably some combination of. I use Clint Eastwood for Batman, so I feel bad that I would use him for the cowboy. Let me give like a different favorite Old West cowboy. Jimmy Stewart's my favorite Old West cowboy.
Oh my God, Winchester 73, all the Anthony Mann movies.
Yes.
Jimmy Stewart's 50s westerns are exceptional.
The Man from Laramie is my favorite. If you want to know my personal favorite,
I like it.
It's him. Is it Arthur Kennedy is the bad guy? It's a great, just like two guys who hate each other and they can't live at the end of the movie. Like one of them has to be dead.
Excellent. Naked Spur is one of my favorites from the.
Yes, 50s. I like Naked Spur is real good too.
So, I agree with Michael. Another great comic, Why I Hate Saturn, by the great Kyle Baker.
Yes, that was on that list of 100 comics, and I read it, and it was very good.
Oh, that's funny. Barucci says
Lancelot 3000. You got to read Bendis's everything: Daredevil, Alias, Powers. Brubaker's Captain America. I'm just naming, like, I'm just looking at my shelf of like all the classic stuff I kept forever. You got to read Usagi Yojimbo. You got to read Simonson's Thor.
I like what Barucci says. He says Perez told him the reason he did Wonder Woman was because Frank Miller did Batman, John Byrne did Superman, so he had to jump on Wonder Woman before somebody else did. Absolutely. Yeah, that was amazing. And James, I'm with you as far as a great Jimmy Stewart Western, The Man Who Shot Liberty Balance. But that's just as much about John Wayne.
Yeah, I was like, I don't consider that to be a Jimmy Stewart Western, I guess, in my head.
Oh, I think it's a two-hander.
No, he's the star of it, but it's not like he's not like a Western hero in it. He's the opposite. That's the whole point of the movie.
Well, that's true. He's a tenderfoot, absolutely. But yeah, that's it's one of my favorite. Again, I don't need to like John Wayne's politics to like John Wayne movies. John Wayne was a presence. You can't deny. Again, he demanded from Stagecoach on. He demanded your attention.
Have you read the book Outrageous yet? That's a book I would recommend to you.
No, tell me.
You know Clift Nesserson? Is Clift the guy
Cliff
who writes?
Yes. The comedian.
He's a historian of comedy, and he just released a brilliant, I think almost a game-changing book called Outrageous that's about the history of comedians getting in trouble for saying things. And it's bizarre because it's not analytical at all. It's just examples. It's just 300 pages of from 1860 to 2000 of what got comedians in trouble, and I think it's incredibly interesting.
I've heard him interviewed about that book, and I'm really bummed. He came on my show when he did his first comedian's book 7 or 8 years ago, and I've tried to get him back, and I can't get him back. And it's like, all right, well, at least I got my one bite of the apple. And he's hilarious, and I do love when he comes on Mark Maron and some of the other interview shows. God, he did a bunch of fantastic interviews with Gilbert Gottfried before.
Yes, they're great. He did like 4 of them. They're wonderful.
And the previous book that he had just released about Native American stand-up
is also very good. Yes.
I love the title of it. We had a slight real estate problem. I think that's a fantastic title about Native Americans. Absolutely. But yeah, I do know about that book, the Outrageous book.
And that the F and F Troop stands for fuck. That's the revolution.
Yeah, that was an old Red Fox bit where there was the Native Americans who were called the Fakawi, and it was where the fuck are we? So that's where that came from, and they couldn't say that on F Troop, so they called them where the heck are we? Where the heck are we? So I love that show. F Troop is a ridiculous show, but it is so absurdly funny, and everybody, really, Forrest Tucker and Larry Storch were a fantastic comedy team. And then 10 years later, they did the original Ghostbusters, not to be confused with the movies, but a terrible throwaway Saturday morning show. But again, you couldn't deny their comedic chemistry. They were fantastic together.
I'm a huge fan of the Gilbert Gottfried podcast, and they're a huge fan of F Troop. That's mostly how I know it.
Oh yeah,
that's my quiet place I go to. I listen to reruns of the Gilbert Gottfried.
I do too, man. I forget what friend, my buddy Mike Campomoso, Skokie Spidey, on our Oh Yeah podcast. He loves Gilbert too, and he used to call in and get questions on the air and stuff, and even would do when they would do fan call-in shows. He managed to get on a couple of times. And I'm like, do you listen to the reruns? He goes, no. I'm like, oh my God, because I forget. There's so many great interviews. I just listened to, God, who did he have on this week? Really? It was Henry Winkler. They reran his Henry Winkler.
I just listened to that too. My God, I can't believe the two of us listened to that. We must be the biggest. Wait, John, before we go, I need to talk to you about something that I can only talk to you about.
Whatever, however late you want to go, man.
This is the last thing, and this is way off topic of anything comic books.
Go ahead.
You recommended the YouTube RKO documentary on some podcast, and I'm about halfway through, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. I never knew all those nooks and crannies about RKO.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. But it begins with one of the craziest things with Richie Valley. Is that Valley or Rudy Valley? Valley? Saying how many women he slept with in an interview for the documentary.
Yes,
and he goes. The women used to tell me I have a cock in my mouth, and I had a cock in my mouth. I was like, "What is that?"
Because of his
and that's because that's why I must have slept with 145 of them. It's like,
well,
oh my God.
It's true, and again, it is so many generations earlier. But Rudy Valley, before Bing Crosby, even, let alone Frank Sinatra and Elvis and some of the other great solo singers, Rudy Valley was the shit in the 20s. And literally would sing with a megaphone. My time is your time, and it's insane. And was in so many early talkies, and it's like, and really by the 60s, if you see him as Professor Fogg in the Batman Londinium 2-parter with Catwoman, he's the bad guy and stuff. And he was kind of having a bit of a nostalgic resurgence in the 60s. He'd show up on Lucy and some of these other shows. And it's like, no, man, this guy was like an icon in the 20s. And
he's great in Palm Beach Story, a good Sturgis film.
Yeah, and I've seen him in other 40s films where he's like, kind of the way Ralph Bellamy would play like the boyfriend you didn't want the star to be with.
Yeah.
Like how Ralph Bellamy is in the Philadelphia Array. And
the interview with him in that RKO thing is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It was that
I in his mouth. Yeah.
Dude, I just wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed it. It was such a great recommendation, and it's a wonder because they interview like the guy who did the voices for King Kong. You know, like it's that perfect thing where everyone is still alive.
Yes,
and ready to talk about all the secrets.
It was made in either the 80s or very early 90s, and honestly, I had no idea. Greg's asking what's the name of this documentary? The RKO Story, and it's like 6 or 8 parts. Ed Asner's the narrator. I believe it was made for British television. And yeah, everyone that was alive is in it. Everyone that was alive that worked at RKO.
Yeah, they do a thing on Fred Astaire, and you're like, oh, it's interesting to talk about. Like, okay, we're going to talk to Fred, Ginger, and Pan. Like all the 3 of them. We talked to all of them about what it was actually like. And you're like, oh my God, they're on there and they're being interviewed about it. Wow.
100%, man. No, it's absolutely amazing. And I didn't know that the people who ultimately bought RKO from Hughes, they only wanted the library to exploit on TV.
Yeah.
And that's when they sold it to Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. They sold the studio. And Desi rolled the dice and bought RKO and then proceeded to make like 10 years of dramatic and sitcom television where they were all hits. There's another documentary to watch to do after RKO called The Desi Lou Story. And yeah, certainly, of course, Lucy and Desi's I Love Lucy and The Lucy Show are a big part of it. But also, they produced The Untouchables. They produced Our Miss Brooks. They produced all these other big shows that were big hits in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. Amazing.
And, of course, Lucy greenlit Star Trek and Mission Impossible.
Not bad.
So, Bruno very quickly says they miss you in Brazil.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't come. It had nothing to do with anything. It was just behind the scenes, Michigas.
Understood. Thank you, Tom. As always, great job. This is going to be an audio 2-parter, and it's
my absolute pleasure. Thank you, John. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for being listeners. I've been a fan for 20 years. I'll be a fan for 20 more years. You're the best, and you're the best, and I appreciate you. That's all I'm trying to say. And people should go on and pre-order Helen of Wyndhorn. So 2 things. John's the best. Helen of Wyndhorn.
Let's remind everybody, Animal Pound is up and running at Boom, and coming in March, Helen of Wyndhorn. The final order cutoff is the end of January.
Just stay to your store. I want that Tom King Helen book. That's it. That's all.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Until next time, everybody, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.